Just a few film nerds breaking out of a rut, drooling over cinema that's hard and uncut. Stick us in your ear, thrill to this month's picks, and come and listen in, we're Measuring Flicks.
Hello everyone, welcome to Measuring Flicks. I'm Carl Hartley.
I'm Max Peterson. Today we are talking about 1985's Brazil, directed by Terry Gilliam.
See, and you're going to have that song stuck in your head for like 10 days.
Well, I'm going to have it stuck in my head a lot longer. As I told you when you got here, like the first thing I said was, just so you know, actually I was still watching the movie when you got here.
You were still watching it.
But yeah, I'm buying the hell out of this movie.
Sweet.
And then the movie was heinously depressing, and I cried a bunch. But still, it was comforting in no way.
So obviously, you watched the Terry Gilliam cut, not the Love Conquers All 95-minute version of this film.
You told me. Oh, right.
It's on the second disc. You might want to hold on to it. And
should I give it a spin?
You should give it a spin. It's worth seeing just because. So you watched the 2.5 or 2 hours plus.
I watched the one that's on disc 1.
Yep. So
that's Gilliam's cut?
That's Gilliam's cut.
Okay.
Because it has everything's in the correct order.
Okay. What?
And the ending is correct.
What?
And,
what is the other cut of the movie?
And there's the dream sequences. And
the other version of this movie doesn't have the dream sequences?
So the other version of this movie begins somewhere around when Sam Laurie is having lunch with his mom and her mom's friend, and there's a terrorist explosion in the restaurant.
That's when the movie starts?
I think the Tuttle Buttle thing is not even in it. Like, the dream sequences with the samurai are not in it. The whole plot of the movie
The impetus of the movie is the Tuttle Buttle thing.
It becomes a weird kind of... I haven't watched the Love Conquers All version in about 10 years because it's so jarring to watch it.
Okay.
But it's important because we've talked many times about when you can tell when there's a studio or a producer note, like, you're going to want to make sure that you change that, our demographics are not going to understand the bit.
What did they do with the ending? Because this movie, the version I watched, I can just see studio execs being like, this ending's not going to fly.
Oh, that's totally what they said. And I think it's Universal, they took it away from him. It's like, you are not allowed to release this. The only reason we have the version that we do is because Terry Gilliam was teaching somewhere, like at a film festival. He asked the studio, is it okay if I show some of my cut to these film students or whatever, so they know what my movie looks like? And the studio's like, yes, but you can only show like 10 minutes of it. And Gilliam said, heard, and played the whole fucking thing 10 times. And so the festival's like, this movie is fucking amazing. So they that's how...
Quick, everyone, watch
this movie.
And he threw it up, and so many people were like, this is brilliant. The studio's fucking suck.
And then the studio released Brazil, and people watched it and were like, what the fuck is this movie? It's not even in the right order. Whole scenes are cut out. Like, it's really weird to watch. So the movie ends with them getting away. The two of them, like escaping the city and living happily ever after in a field somewhere. Like that scene where they drive out,
which ends up being a hallucination. Yeah. Right. So they left that as like, and here's what actually happens.
Right. So that's why it's called like the Love Conquers All version, because they turn it into a really stupid love story that just happens to be set in like 1984.
Yeah.
Do you know the original working title for this that he was banging around with is 1984 and a half?
Really?
Yeah. This is your first Terry Gilliam or second?
I have seen 2 Terry Gilliam films, but based on this movie, I think I've seen his two least Gilliam-esque films. I've seen Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas and 12 Monkeys, both of which are like wild movies.
But they're more palatable to like the movie-going audience, I think.
Yeah.
They're not as Gilliam as, say, Baron Munchausen or this.
But does he do other stuff like this?
Yes.
That, like, dream, there's, like, masks and weird creatures.
So this is the middle film of... it's what's called his trilogy of the imagination. It's Time Bandits is the first in the trilogy. Then you have this, which is Brazil, and then The Adventures of Baron Munchausen, which we're watching later on this month. So they're all about being in different points. Well, people can take it different ways, and you can listen to interviews with Gilliam, and he says it's the Time Bandits is being young and not being happy in your environment and finding a way to escape. Brazil is about being in like your middle ages and not being happy. The Middle Ages, being middle aged, like 30 to 40, and not being happy where you are and finding a way to escape.
Right.
And then The Adventures of Baron Munchausen is being elderly and not being happy in your situation, being able to escape. But I take these, so those three are a little bit more, they're very much the whimsical aspect of Terry Gilliam. I mean, like the Fisher King gets there in places, which is another amazing set in like reality, but because it deals with sort of mental illness in a way,
Right.
he can pepper in these moments of like the samurai dream sequences and the really weird, even when you're in the real world in Brazil, it feels...
Well, like
his design is so like very specific. And
it's amazing. The
Yeah.
set design in this movie is amazing. Before we get into the nitty gritty of the film, though, you mentioned that in Time Bandits in this movie and in The Adventures of Baron Munchausen, you were talking about being dissatisfied and wanting to escape. And I noted that as well. I wrote down escapist fiction, and I wrote it down when he's basically like tortured into insanity at the end of the movie,
Yeah.
and we realize that this grand adventure that we've been seeing where he escapes and he blows up the ministry and he gets into he fights, he's back in the corridor from his dreams, and then he gets his dream girl and they go and settle down. And that escapist fiction thing, there's a great essay in a book called The View from the Cheap Seats by Neil Gaiman.
Ooh.
And Neil Gaiman wrote basically an essay about escapist fiction, because a lot of critics that he's run into over the years as a creator, not just of fiction, but of like fantasy, science fiction, and things like that, the more fanciful, the more fantasy type stuff. He's often people will call his fiction escapist or refer to authors he likes as just escapist fiction as like a critique.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Okay.
like, oh well, what? There's this big fight basically between literary fiction, and what's called genre fiction.
Sure.
Which is right, which is why like when people talk about the great American novels, it's always like literary fiction,
like Cormac McCarthy, or even more so,
more like Faulkner.
Oh, like the deep. So you could almost say that.
For example, Stephen King.
I was going to say King, right?
We've come back to him again and again. The job of the artist is to hold up a mirror, and that's the idea behind literary fiction, which is like show people the world they live in and pull back the curtain on the atrocities of the real world. And in some
Shakespeare even sort of makes fun of it in Hamlet too, holding a mirror up to nature. Nature is the name of the character,
right?
Actually, literally holding a mirror up to himself, like.
It's so this. I mean, and yeah, there you go. The debate has gone back and forth forever because when you look at Shakespeare, he has fairies in his plays, and he's got like
witches and shit.
Witches, and there's like dark forces at work and stuff. The idea that a popular creator of fantasy or science fiction is creating escapist literature, and that because it's escapist, it's somehow lesser.
Less than?
But there's a great quote that, no, it's C.S. Lewis.
Ooh.
He says, "The only people who unveil against escape are jailers."
That's a great quote.
Yeah, and the idea of that essay that I read it sparked sort of a deeper examination of why I like the literature I do. He points out that it's good to occasionally, when you go into an escapist piece of literature or fiction or whatever, you go there and you escape for a moment.
Yeah, and then you rally with them.
Right, yeah, and the not only do you get away from, if you're in a shitty situation and you read, some fun fantasy book, you get away from your shitty situation for a little while, but while you're there, you can pick up tools and you can pick up ideas and you can pick up hope that you can bring back to the world with you.
You put them in your bag and you pull them into the real world.
Right.
You really do.
Seeing that here, that Terry Gilliam thing, so much of this movie is about the veneer, the surface veneer and the facade.
Yes.
And then he pulls it away and shows you what reality is like.
I even have a note so far as like in his design is so specific in all of his movies, which is usually why he goes so far over budget. Like he has a very specific, unique vision, and if it is not right, he won't film it. He's like, no, I need this to look exactly like it does in my brain, or I'm not gonna film this shit. So he'll go like way over budget. But one of the things that I noticed not only the first time, but then again on this viewing is the technology first feels like that sort of retro but far advanced. So it's like all this weird ductwork and paneling and this weird shit, but you also sense that it's super futuristic and like these supercomputers. But the thing that I notice and continue to notice, speaking of like pulling back the veneer and being like, here's your actual reality, is all of the computer screens that they're working off of are super, super small.
Right.
And they view them through very large magnifying glasses.
Right.
So the information that they're viewing is actually altered in some way. They're not even looking at it direct. There's no direct connection with any of this computerized information.
I did not notice that.
So they're not even because this is like that information. There's a form for everything. If you have to take a shit, you have to fill out a D847//D or whatever, and people are like all about the paperwork. But even that information that they're coming into direct contact with there's a layer between it, which is this huge magnifying glass,
the paperwork,
and mirrors that they use to. Because when the oh my God, what the fuck, Chuck. Jill.
Yeah.
Our female protagonist, the literally dream girl.
Yeah.
When she is watching her screen, they're always watching westerns or something, which I think is fantastic.
Casablanca
at one point. She's watching her main television, which is in her living room, through a series of mirrors that are on her bathtub. So she's not actually watching a real screen on her tub, like an iPad or something. It's removed.
Yeah.
Several times removed. And that's most of the time when people are viewing technology or information on a screen, there is some sort of either a magnifying glass or a mirror or some other lens that they're viewing it through.
Something that that's really interesting because their computers not only is there a layer of remove between them and their information, entertainment, whatever.
There's a ministry of everything.
Yeah, but it's also the lens that they look at their computer through distorts what they're seeing. As if you had a series of several mirrors, there's a good chance there would be distortion as well, so that no one is actually seeing anything. They're seeing altered versions of things.
Which is why, there's literally a fly in the ointment at the very beginning of this movie. It's the cause of everything is a fly gets into one of these machines
that are printing up arrest warrants.
So Tuttle Buttle.
Right. It changes one letter and they arrest the wrong man.
And that's what sends us off on this whole adventure. And but even that, it's like, well, the technology that could be skewed anyways because you're viewing it through mirrors and magnifying glasses. It only takes one little error and it sends everybody off. Just completely off the rails. This perfect society where there's 18 forms to get your heating fixed.
Right.
This one little fly dropping into the mechanism completely sets it up. But then it doesn't. It really only affects 2-3 people. The rest of the world is completely unaware that this is happening.
It ends up kind of like tangentially affecting a bunch of people, like the security officers who are killed. Which by the way that's a pretty heavy moment. But can we get bogged down in bureaucracy for a moment?
Sure can.
Because I feel like the paperwork and what you said this was made in 1985?
85, yeah.
This is kind of in the same era that Alan Moore and not Dave Gibbons. Bird, do you remember the artist on V for Vendetta? Anyway, it's Dave Gibbons is the guy who did Watchmen. It's not him. Anyway,
but it's
Bird's gonna go grab the book from
fair
upstairs.
enough. Thank you.
But
I love V.
This is the same era that graphic novel was being serialized. That V for Vendetta, which is another 1984 spin, where the government has become so huge and so massive, and there's all these ministries, and people are getting black bagged and sucked out into the night. And this movie deals with that so powerfully. Also, the movie came out in 1985, and it's very clearly influenced by Orwell's 1984. And like that, he's not wrong. Like this, in this particular era, this particular piece of time, we're seeing. It's really scary because we're in 2018 and I'm watching this movie and I'm like, this is crazy relevant.
This is crazy. It's like, it's freaking me the fuck out how relevant it is.
This movie could have been made, like if you updated the effects like slightly and made things more, I'm glad they, like I was thinking like if this movie was more CGI, like loads of CGI, this could have been a 2018 film and it could have been a filmmaker commenting on America now today.
Yes.
But it's not. This movie is 1985, and we talked about it a little bit when we covered The Jacket, how upsetting it is that nothing has changed.
The progress
in
is almost swinging back the other way.
Yeah. Do I not have a copy of V for Vendetta upstairs?
It's not on the shelf.
That's not good.
Oh my!
Where's my copy of V for Vendetta? Fuck that noise. But I've often talked on with Bird and on the other podcast about this this tendency that we have more and more to cut. David Lloyd, thank you. That to cut everything into boxes and compartmentalize everything. And with bureaucracy, it's so that no one has to take responsibility. You just kick it to the other department.
Exactly.
You kick it to the other guy. And that's what we see here, which is there's a bit where he's talking, where Sam goes to talk to his friend Jack, who's like the interrogator, basically, who he interrogates all of the criminals and gets them to
confess,
quote unquote, confess.
Yeah.
It's like they're tortured in a giant room until they confess.
Right,
basically.
exactly.
But he goes there and he's like, oh, because at one point this guy that they arrest, Buttle, dies. He's killed under interrogation.
Didn't realize he had a heart condition because they had his wrong information.
Right, exactly. Right. They just transposed a name. So they were supposed to arrest Tuttle, but they arrested Buttle instead, which meant that all the information they thought they knew about Tuttle is wrong. So when they go to interrogate him, there's nothing in his file.
His heart explodes.
His heart explodes and he dies. And I think it's really interesting that Sam looks at Jack and goes, oh, you're the one who killed Buttle. And Jack goes, no, there's lots and lots of stuff in place so that sort of thing can't happen. It's not my fault that his heart condition wasn't in his file. That's an information.
That's an information, yeah.
He kicks it to the next bureaucratic box.
Yep.
But what Gilliam shows us is that that Buttle's not even a human to Jack. He killed a human being. Mistake or no, he tortured a human being to death, and his issue with it is that there was a problem with the paperwork that caused a mistake in his job.
Yep.
You feel like it's like an inconvenience in his workday where he's like, oh, what?
Oh, they got the wrong paper.
Why did this guy's heart explode? What do you mean it was the wrong file? No, God, I'm gonna have to fill out a report on this.
And the thing with the refund check, that whole bit of business with the Ian Holm character, he's panicking now because something has been kicked back to his office and now the responsibility is kind of laying with him, but he doesn't know how to handle that.
Right.
It's just all he has to do is who am I going to get to sign this? Because I can't have anybody sign it because so he's panicking because there is no instruction manual on how to deal with a refund check because there's never been one.
The refund check, by the way, there's one of the most hilarious and dark jokes I've ever heard in there, which is we're looking at it and we're like, why is Buttle being refunded?
Right.
He was arrested. What's he being refunded for? Is he being compensated for his time? And then we find out that the government charges people for their interrogations.
Yes.
And he says there's a joke where I wrote it down.
The more compliant you are, the less they charge you.
Right, but as long as you, and there's one point where he says for God's sake, just comply before it becomes dangerous to your bank account.
Yeah.
But there's
dangerous to your credit rating.
Yeah, it's a threat to your credit rating or whatever. But there's a bit where he says something like, "Fuck," I know I wrote it down, but he's like, they've Jack's been saying for years that we're not charging them enough for their interrogations. And so he was wrongly interrogated. He died during the interrogation, but some other bureaucratic place is even though he's dead, it's he was wrongly interrogated. So they cut a check to a dead man to refund it, and then they sent it out, and they're like, we did what we were supposed to do.
Now they don't have,
not our problem anymore.
It gets to Ian Holm. He's like, what am I supposed to do with this?
Right.
Which is when they call Sam in.
Right, so they try and authorize it for him, and then it comes right back, and it's like, oh, he's dead. You can't deposit this check to a dead man, and that's when Ian Holmes, he says I may as well go hang myself now, because he doesn't know where to put the paperwork. He's like this gnarled knot of paperwork. I can't fucking deal with this. I'd rather be dead.
I'd rather be dead because there is no, because then he is stuck with it, right? There's nowhere for it to go.
And then Sam, God damn it, this whole.
I love Jonathan Pryce, by the way.
This movie is incredible. What else has Jonathan Pryce been in? Because again, I recognize him.
So he's been in a lot of Gilliam stuff. I mean, he's kind of one of his regulars, but more recently he's been in Game of Thrones. He plays High Sparrow in that.
Okay, yeah.
If you've watched James Bond movies, a lot of people recognize him from the newspaper mogul from Tomorrow Never Dies.
Mm-hmm. Oh my God, yeah. I think that's where I know him from. I'm a huge James Bond fan.
And Jonathan Pryce plays the nervous, sweaty, can't quite talk. Everything's fine.
He does it really, really well.
Really well. I'm just constantly feeling like I'm sweaty and damp, and skinny.
That's what it is damp. Like watching him, you're like, my underarms.
He's always just a little damp in his face. He always just has a little bit of what I call Flirtbergen, which is that little bit of phlegm in the back of your throat that you can't quite clear or swallow it.
Right, but so you constantly
Flirtbergen.
Flirtbergen.
Fleurbegen. Flirtbergen. Not an umlaut.
Like no umlauts.
No umlauts.
Okay.
But so he's constantly like in sort of that state.
Yeah.
Even when he's calm and like
when is he calm?
But he's never really calm because he hates his mom.
Where he seems fairly competent. And
he is competent. That's the thing. That he is very competent in his job. That's why Ian Holm is like, give me Sam, because
he calls for him twice.
Calls for him twice, so he's the guy that can figure shit out. And he gets promoted. Well, his mom.
I thought it was interesting that Sam is highly competent, but what flusters him is other people's inability to like operate within the. There's a great line at the beginning, which is when I can't remember his name, like Halpern or something, Helburn. But the guy who the big head.
Helping. Oh shit.
I can't remember his name, but the big head of the organization,
the Ministry of Information or whatever that is.
Yeah. Well, he in information retrieval, but he also also oversees where Sam originally is, which is like information categorization or whatever. There's 1,000 little ministries within this big
within the one information, because information is like the big one,
right?
But you have information retrieval, then you have information dispersal,
right?
Then you have information.
Well, there's an awesome joke about that when he's like, "I need your file, Jack," and he goes, "This is information retrieval, Sam, not information dispersal." And you're like, but wait, once you've retrieved the information, how does anyone get it?
Right.
And you know what it is? It's a fucking mountain of paperwork.
Yep.
But there's a great moment at the very beginning. It's the opening scene of the film when we are watching this guy. I'm gonna just call him Helburn. I don't think that's his name, but it's close enough, and it basically describes who he is.
Right.
But he's on the television talking about a recent spate of terrorist attacks.
Yes, which the government is actually doing most of.
Right. You get the sense
that government controlled.
Right. A lot of it is
the Ministry of Terrorism or something.
Well, do you remember the V for Vendetta? Not the book. Well, the book, yes, but also the movie. The movie makes it much more clear.
Is it Helpman?
Helpman, yeah.
Yeah.
So, in the movie V for Vendetta, it becomes very clear that the government has fabricated terrorist attacks. Yeah. So, because what happens is your citizenry gets afraid, and in the movie V for Vendetta, they will agree to anything just to feel safe.
Yeah.
They'll give up any amount of freedom to feel safe from danger.
Yeah.
And you realize that the only danger is the government. Mm-hmm. There is no external threat. The government is fabricating terrorist attacks to control the populace through fear. So there's a weird sense. It's not as explicit in this, but there's a definite sense.
But it's definitely a sense of that.
Because they talk about the terrorists, and at one point Jill turns to Sam and says, "Have you ever met a terrorist? How many terrorists have you met?" And he goes, "Actual terrorists?
None."
Yeah, and you realize he's like, "Oh, I never have seen a terrorist." And this dangerous guy, Tuttle, is a glorified, like, heating and plumbing specialist.
Yeah, he's just helping people with their AC because he doesn't want people to have to wait through paperwork.
He's circumventing the paperwork, but literally all he is like a heating guy.
Yeah.
And they're classifying him as a terrorist because he's going around the paperwork.
Yep.
And that's
when we meet Tuttle for the first time. Is the air conditioning goes out in Sam's apartment and it's super fucking hot, so he calls the Ministry of Heating and Cooling or whatever the fuck it is.
Central Services,
right?
Yeah.
And of course he gets caught up in like a phone tree and shit and can't fucking do it. But Robert De Niro, who plays Tuttle,
which is when I realized it was Robert De Niro, because I knew nothing about the movie, and then you hear his voice, he comes in,
like,
and
is
then
that Robert De Niro?
He pulls his mask down, and I still didn't get it for a second. I didn't recognize him, and then at one point he turns and he does that like Robert De Niro like downturn of the mouth, and I'm like, oh my fucking god, Tuttle is Robert De Niro.
But all he did is he intercepted the call.
Right.
He's like, somebody needs their AC, and he shows up like Batman.
I was just gonna say he's like a superhero.
He's a superhero,
Yeah.
but all he does is fixes the air conditioning.
Right.
He's not killing people or exploding
Well-
people. He's not exploding people, Max.
He's not blowing their hearts up.
No, he sure isn't.
But I love when he comes into the he comes in with a gun.
Yes.
And it's because people have tried to set up heating and cooling ambushes to capture this rogue heating and cooling guy
Yep.
who's classified as a terrorist by the Ministry of Information. So he comes in and he finds the problem. This is another, I think, crucial part of the Tuttle arc is he finds the problem in Sam's heating and cooling system. And Sam goes, "Can you fix it?" And he goes, "No."
Nope.
But
I can bypass it.
right, I can bypass it, and that'll ostensibly fix your problem.
Yep.
And you get the sense that he's the heating and cooling guys, the central service guys who come in.
No, the Bob Hoskins and
Bob Hoskins and
the guy that plays the devil in
The other guy,
in Time Bandits.
So they pop in. By the way, their characters are
Amazing.
That
the actual
performance-
central services between those two guys.
Yeah, the performance where Bob Hoskins says something and the other guy mutters the exact same thing, even if they're nowhere near each other in the room, he'll mutter. You can still hear him mutter it.
Yep.
And it's like the delay is not like Bob Hoskins stops, this guy starts. It's Bob Hoskins is almost done and this guy
continues
starts.
it, yeah.
There's a little bit of overlap always, and that is it's like a little subtle performance thing, but as a performer who's done the where you try and layer dialogue, that's fucking hard.
And they're almost literally Mario and Luigi.
I know, it's so funny. But you get the sense that when those central heating guys come in, or central services guys
Right.
come in, they would find the problem, but they can't just bypass it.
Nope.
That's not regulation. That
So-
would be a mountain of paperwork. So they would probably either not fix his shit, or they'd put in like a work request and it wouldn't get fixed for like months and months and months.
yeah.
It takes Robert De Niro like 30 seconds.
Yep.
He puts this little bypass valve on, and you realize that in a world where everyone must strictly adhere to the rules, and not only strictly adhere to the rules, but like wade through form after form after form and cross every T and dot every I, nothing really gets done. That's not an efficient way to live.
Right.
You need a little bit of like wiggle room and flexibility. And then we see a world in which a totalitarian rigidity to the order of law and the rule of law becomes counterproductive to society.
Yeah.
This is crazy.
Isn't
good
it nuts,
movie.
right? Because I feel like the reason all of that bureaucracy is in place to make sure that everything runs smoothly and there's no questions, no mistakes are made.
Right.
But then it fails. It's like a self-fulfilling sort of like it's doomed to fail just because of how many departments there are. So or it's meant to fail to keep people more
Keep people down.
Keep people down.
Well, then there's something really interesting, kind of along. It's not really along the lines of doublespeak, but it's doublespeak in a way where it's not, and we don't see a political party like we see in movies like
No.
V for Vendetta in 1984. I mean, also both books, but we're on a movie podcast. God damn it! But there's a sense. I like that ringtone. There's a sense that the government, we don't see the government, we just see this information ministry primarily, but
Right.
we get a sense that they are saying one thing to the populace and the reality is wildly different.
Yes.
But when you see the people seem to, oh, you know what, there's two strata of people though. The rich people, which is Sam's world because his mom is
His
fabulously
mom is
wealthy.
super rich.
The
right?
rich people all go with that veneer, but the real people, the people who are not part of the central services or part of the information society or people who have gotten out like Tuttle, they recognize the realities of the world. I think the big one that I come to is the truth shall make you free.
Yeah.
That sculpture. By the way, that sculpture of the angels is one of the most fucking beautiful things I've ever seen, and I think Dave McKean and Neil Gaiman reference it in their film Mirror Mask, which we
amazing.
should watch at some point if you haven't seen
I
it.
don't know. I've seen Mirror Mask.
Okay, yeah, Mirror Mask is killer. And then there's another sign that says suspicion breeds confidence. And that, how fucked up is that? Because when you think about it,
And also, we're all in this together is a big sign that gets repeated a lot.
but when you and what I love is we're all in this together, but then when you hear Tuttle say it, you realize that it means two different things.
Completely.
When the government says it's like we're all in this
Hey,
together.
we're all in this together.
Like, so everybody do your part. You've got to, you know, you are all cogs, and if you stop turning, we all stop turning.
Right.
But when Tuttle says it, it's like, look, we're all getting fucked over,
right.
So we have to band together.
We gotta
take care of each other, right? So one is like you need to fulfill your function, and the other one is you need to take care of your fellow man.
Yeah.
But it's the same phrase. When I saw "Suspicion breeds confidence," the first thing I thought is, if you see something, say something, and I was like, oh my
shit.
God. This is real life. This is
happening
I'm
now.
like, this is not escapist fiction. This is just like a slightly weird looking version of 2018. I was in the Chicago Transit Authority a couple years ago, heading home to visit, and I took a big train ride, and every screen was playing some variation of, if you see any suspicious behavior, find your nearest, Chicago.
Have you been in
Transit
charge
police
of your
officer.
luggage the entire time? Has anyone had? Yeah.
Well, it wasn't so much that. That's what it struck me watching it, because it wasn't like watch out for your own luggage.
Oh, it was watch out for other people's shit.
other people.
Right.
It wasn't, because if it had been like, take care of your luggage, I'm like,
You're
okay,
like,
yeah, take care of my luggage.
Makes sense.
But all these videos and all these
watch
signs,
other people's shit.
Yeah, it was. Dude, it was the most eerie thing I've ever seen, because I hadn't been in an airport or in a big transit place for a long time, but every screen was like, it wasn't about make sure that you know what you're carrying. It was, if you see anyone doing anything looking shady, go and tell someone. You know what was really fucked up is it happened twice in 2 hours while I was in that transit waiting for my next train. Where two like security guards would walk up to someone from opposite sides, and they'd be like, "Excuse us, sir, we need to."
So
come
it
and
was a call made, not that because if they're.
Well, not necessarily, because there was always like 3 or 4 transit cops in, like, because there's a lot of it's big rooms that sort of branch off to platforms.
Sure.
So they'd be like in corners, and what I got the sense was like someone in the earpiece was like, "All right, guy, red hat over by the fountain," and then 2 of them would flank the dude. It was really eerie, because they'd come
creepy.
like wolves,
Yeah,
and they'd get up next to the guy and be like, "Excuse us, sir, we need you to come in," and be like, "What? Why? What are you talking about? Why do you need... Okay, sir, you need to stop making a scene immediately." And I saw 2 people literally escorted. And what was really strange is, like, looking around, these are just people, like, commuting.
Right.
Nothing fucking weird is happening. But when you're surrounded by video screens and posters that are like,
if you see
you're
anything,
surrounded by terrorists.
Right.
Pick out as many as you can. It's literally suspicion.
It almost sets
breeds
you up to, like,
confidence.
do you feel like you haven't done your job as a citizen if you haven't pointed somebody out?
And and you know what the worst part is the people that, and it's not the worst part, but the people who were getting like they weren't grabbed. The body bags in this they literally haunt me. That in this movie that we're talking about in Brazil, that where they like slap that body bag and then they lock the thing around your neck, and the legal system is just you on a conveyor belt.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's fucking so spooky, dude.
Yeah.
But it was always people who had tattoos, or someone had like an eyebrow ring.
They fit a particular.
Our culture says shady,
or
right, whatever.
If you're wearing a hoodie, if you have tattoos, if you're like right.
But like the dangerous. Now I'm generalizing again, but like like they say that spies are the people that you forget the second you see them.
Oh, absolutely.
Like you just want to look normal, and probably a terrorist is not going to walk in with like a leather jacket and a face tattoo that says "Death to America." No, he's gonna like come in like a cheap suit.
He might be walking in with a wife on his arm and 2 kids and one in the stroller.
Right, but like these these old women see a dude with like a face tattoo and they're like, "I saw a terrorist over by the fountain," and it's weird because this culture of like, the truth shall make you free, suspicion breeds confidence, and like we're all in this together. It turns society into police.
Yeah.
Where we're policing ourselves. Oh, it's so.
But that's a weird. So ultimately you want your fellow human being to be safe, right?
Yeah.
I want my friends to be safe. I want my family to be safe. So, but there is some sort of like, if I see somebody like loading a truck with bombs or something, I'll be like, that's wrong.
Right.
Or if you do see something like that's super suspicious, like that's a shotgun, then you should probably say something.
Right.
But we've gone too far, right? It's like where we're almost looking for it instead of. So if they see something, say something. I get it. You know, it's like we should be responsible human beings and like looking out for each other in some way. But then it's too much when you're always looking for it. Like or then because not all people are good people.
Yeah.
So some people will use that as an excuse to call out other people and like and
just cause trouble for people.
Well, I mean, just recently we had the woman that called the police on the black family that was having a barbecue or whatever.
What? I hadn't heard that.
Oh, you haven't seen that?
I heard about the black man in Starbucks who got arrested for loitering, and he was waiting to go to a business meeting.
Yeah, because he was a lawyer or something, and
But they're like, there's a black man, and he's in the Starbucks.
No, there was some woman that called the police on a family that was like having a barbecue. And like they were just having a barbecue, but they're like, so there's all these memes right now, like black people having fun is like, no, it's like what the fuck? But that's like the same sort of. It's
so
like,
basically I don't know the story, but like some racist old lady just called.
She's just called the police and they're like, I don't know what they're doing, but it can't be good, and like you need to bring. So these people got harassed for having a fucking barbecue.
Wow.
But it's sort of the same. So see something, say something. It's like if you are a not good human being, you could use that as a green light to like fuck with people.
That's weirdly, this happened to me and my family when we were when I was living up in Hubble. And
you were living in the Hubble?
I was living in the Hubble Space Telescope.
Great view.
No, I was. There's a town called Hubble in the Upper Peninsula, but I was living up there, and my dad worked all day, and my mom usually worked she was like a substitute teacher, so we got off school. My brother and I. Mm-hmm. I was probably 10 or 11. I was probably 11, probably 10 or 11, which would make my brother like 6-ish. So we got done. We walked home from school. You know, the bus dropped us off and we walked to our house, and Mom was just getting done, so she was about 15 minutes behind us. So my brother and I, me about 10, him about 6, were home alone for about 15 minutes. And then my mom got home, right? Mm-hmm. And then the next morning, a police officer showed up at our house.
The next morning.
Because he came in and he's like, look, we have to, it was a police officer and a person from Child Protective Services.
Jesus.
And they interviewed my brother and I, and they interviewed my mom, and my dad was home because it was a weekend. And they were like, okay, so we just want you to know, like, someone did report you. They had said that you were leaving your children home alone for hours on end, and like you had like sometimes abandoned your children for a few days. And it was all fucking just not true at all. We'd been home about 15 minutes, and my mom was always really careful to never leave us home alone.
Right.
Because she's like
she's like a good mom.
Yeah, she's not because she's like paranoid about getting in trouble, but because she's like, I don't want my babies home alone. But she was late one day.
Right.
And we found out that my mom, we didn't get along very well with our neighbors. Shit went kind of sideways. They built like a 20-foot fence that blocked my mom's view of the sunrise. And the best part is they only built it in a 15-foot section just specifically to block the sunrise. But anyway, the cop was like, so we realized that this call was completely bullshit. So, and Mom's like, can you just tell me who called? Like, why would anyone do this? And he goes, ma'am, I'm sorry, I can't tell you. It is anonymous who made the call. I do have to use your bathroom, though, so where's your bathroom at? And Mom's like, down the hall. So he's like, I'm just going to leave this here. And he set the file down open on our kitchen table and went to the bathroom for like 10 minutes and then came back and he's like, well, everything seems to be in order. Yeah, so Mom read it and it was our neighbor.
Yeah.
Our neighbor called Child Protective Services and was like, and she beats them and she leaves them alone. And the
fuck is wrong with people, man?
The lady from Child Protective Services was like, are you okay? Like, how are you kids doing? I'm like, my mom's great. My mom's awesome. She doesn't give me enough graham crackers, though. You should yell at her. Like that type of shit. Yeah. But yeah, like this is a thing.
Yeah.
And to go to your point about taking it too far, I think there's a line. There's a middle ground somewhere between neighborhood watch and police state surveillance state.
Yep, absolutely. Totally fine with neighborhood watch. Not okay with police state.
Because we're hearing more and more shit nowadays about like, there's that thing that they always tell you about your laptop, which is your camera and your mic are always on.
Yeah.
And there was that WikiLeaks thing about, just so you know, the NSA can activate anyone's cell phone, and now your mic is a bug.
It could be on right now. You don't even know it.
Right. At any point, if you have an electronic device with a microphone that has any kind of signal, whether it's data or Wi-Fi, like that, they can just listen to that.
Yep.
So that's the world that we are genuinely actually living in right now. V for Vendetta addresses it in the context, basically, of critiquing the Patriot Act post 9/11.
Yes.
This movie does it as a weird, just natural extension of the way that things were going when this film was made.
And we are coming to its ultimate conclusion, or we're in the middle of that.
Yeah. You hear people, and it's easy to say stuff like, oh, that's just crazy conspiracy. That's just a crazy conspiracy. But there's people out there who are like, just so everyone's on the same page, we're all under constant surveillance.
Yes.
In some form or
just
other.
in case you're not aware.
Even if if it could be your metadata, like your text messages, your phone calls, your emails, just so you know.
And even if you are completely off the grid, you don't have a cell phone. You've been really cautious about your shit.
Right.
You're everywhere. There's CCTVs. The buddy that you're standing next to, his phone is on.
His phone's on. Exactly.
You can be unless you're living in the middle of the woods somewhere. Oh, even that you have satellite surveillance and shit, and
right.
And werebears.
And there's werebears.
Werebears.
Terrifying.
I know.
And then And then there's I like this new trend we have of talking about the real world in context of films.
Yeah.
But
well, that's sort of what film does, though, especially with movies like Brazil, where it's holding a mirror up to nature, and it's showing you it's a cautionary tale in some ways, but it's also just plain old fantasy and escapism. But there is a reason for it. It's 1984 and a half, right?
It is.
So it's hard to talk about a movie like Brazil and not talk about where we are in 2018. We're not going to come home from watching the Avengers Infinity War and have a huge conversation about police states and the difference between Neighborhood Watch and, but a movie like this will bring up those questions, and it's a very, that's why these movies are made and why I think people should watch them and talk about them.
Yeah.
Period. Well, you don't have to agree with what we're saying. We're not actually putting an opinion out there. We're just stating things.
And I don't think that what we're saying is as strange as
take me away.
Not anymore. Yeah. Just by the way, I just love and respect everything the NSA does. Hardworking.
Absolutely. I mean, they're people. They're human beings too.
That's important to remember.
But it is. I'm not even joking. It's there are people that work in these organizations that are human beings, and it's a job that they have to do.
Yeah.
But I mean, you don't necessarily have to agree with the fact that what our government is doing is at the end of the day, there's Joe Schmo and Jane Schmo that have to punch a clock and they might fucking hate their jobs
there are
too.
People who need, who are after the healthcare, or who want a career, or who are looking for a pension plan. Especially in an economic recession, a government job.
And
is
government
a good,
jobs
safe thing.
have really good
Unless, the government shuts down because Congress is a bunch of children. And then no one gets paid until they start
but
the
I think
government
people forget
back up.
that, too, though. Is this government entity are families and people, too. It's weird, right? It's fuck.
Well, my dad works for the government.
Yeah.
And my dad has a government job.
Yeah.
He's...
Your mail got delivered to this week, right? Government employee.
Yeah, there you go. The post office.
Yep.
Yeah, right. It's... you familiar at all with the Oklahoma City bombings, Timothy McVeigh? Mm-hmm. So Timothy McVeigh, one of his big things was he picked that building because there were so many government workers in it, and he was a huge Star Wars fan, and he thought what he was doing was something blowing up the Death Star. And he knew, when they interviewed him, he knew there were innocent people in there, but he literally referred to them. It was just government, office workers. He said that there were, he's they made the choice to work for the evil empire. And it's easy to turn people into adversaries, but they're not. They're people,
right?
We are all the hero of our own story. If you can get into someone else's head, no one is out. Okay, maybe not no one, but
right.
The majority of people, if you just pop into their perspective, they're not wringing their mustache and trying to think of ways to destroy the world. They're just thinking about oh shit, I forgot to get milk.
Right.
Or like, man, I'm worried about making the house payment this month. Ugh, maybe weird.
I forgot breakfast this morning. I need to be better about eating breakfast.
Right,
every
or
day.
like,
it's the most important.
I need to
meal
use that gym membership
Right,
more.
yeah.
Like everyone thinks like we do. We are not all like, like I understand my unique perspective in this evil monolithic government that's built of people.
But I also think that there are a good percentage of people that do, though, and those are the assholes that call Child Protective Services and the police on your mom.
Right. Not everyone's good, but everyone is someone.
Right. That's
And
true too.
It's so it's weird, but this is what like living in the world is you can't reduce people to like your
the a common sort of
or a mistake in paperwork,
right?
Like fucking Jack does.
Yeah, exactly.
He kills an innocent man, and he's like, oh, it's just like wow, what an inconvenience that my
my paperwork got messed up. So speaking of that character Jack, that's Michael Palin.
Okay.
Who is you're not like the biggest Monty Python fan, right? Have you seen like
we talked about this. I recognize almost everyone,
right,
but I don't know where from.
So Michael Palin, Jack.
Okay.
That was a huge departure for him playing this dark, like he's the torturer of people in this. Like he is the government's scalpel, essentially, right? He's the one that's going to get the information from them or make them brain dead or whatever.
Right.
And you get the sense he kind of likes his job a little bit. But so Michael Palin he's one of the Pythons. He's like John Cleese or Eric Idle.
Right.
Before watching this movie, you're used to seeing him in like Monty Python's Flying Circus or the Holy Grail. It's like, and to see him in such a dark role as this, you're like, holy fuck, Michael Palin.
But I didn't know he was part of Monty Python, but I thought that in particular the scene where we find out that he's the man in room 5001
right
was very Python-esque. I think it makes sense to me. You remember in The Meaning of Life when the organ donor people come?
Here for your liver. Yeah.
Right, and they come back and they take that dude's liver and he's still alive.
And it's Michael Palin's one of the surgeons pulling the liver out, right?
I would say that's shockingly dark. The wife is back there like offering them tea and they've got the paperwork all in order, so they're just going to take his liver now, and he's screaming the whole time.
Like blood-curdling screams.
Like, and it gets weaker and weaker, and there's blood, and they're pulling unnecessary organs out and throwing them. And one guy is very like, he's just talking with the wife, making conversation, and then later he sings about the meaning of life in the universe, which is that is an amazing film. But I think this is is Terry Gilliam British?
No, he's the American of the Pythons.
Terry Gilliam? Mm-hmm. Okay. So I would say that this scene with that character Jack, the Michael Palin character, is British humor, dark British humor. It's satirical. It's like stunningly satirical. There's a couple of moments here where I thought about drone pilots, and this is one of them, where we come in and he's got these devices on his head and he's moaning because he's fucked up.
He's fucked up, yeah.
Like his job is to torture people, and he's sitting there and he's like
massaging his head,
over by the mirror. And later we see him cover the microphone and he's like, "You stupid bastard. What have you done? Why did you do?" And he's like, "I'm so scared, Jack." And he's like, "How do you think I feel?" And then he uncovers the mic and he's like, "We have a professional relationship." Like, there's little moments where, it's veneer and reality. Where he, for all intents and purposes, he dresses up in his nice suit and he walks home and he's got triplets. Say hi to the twins for me. It's triplets. Triplets now. Yes, how time flies. That's such a funny fucking joke. Where, no, it's still the same children we're talking about.
Right,
You just made a mistake, but, time flies. Like, now it's triplets? No, that's not how babies work.
Right.
But no, like, on the surface, he's a calm, comported professional man with a family. Nope, mommy's coming soon. Like, but when you see snippets of the real Jack, where he's haunted and he's breaking down in the corner, and then in comes Sam, and oh, hello Sam, it's good to see you. And he's right back to professionalism. We see it again when he has to interrogate.
Well, when he realizes when he's walking down the gangway and realizes that it's Jack or that it's Sam sitting there,
you see him
he freaks the fuck out.
Yeah, he stops and turns back.
He doesn't know, he's trying to grab his torture implements and he can't, like, he fumbles them.
He like bangs into it's great performance, because again, he's a funny actor, and the stuff the satirical stuff where he's like just brushing off killing a guy or brushing off like forgetting his daughter's name. You know, like he repeatedly does it. He calls her like Barbara, and she's like, "I'm Penny," and he goes, "Oh, so you are." But like,
Yes, of course you are.
but there's those funny moments. But then, to his credit as a great actor, there's moments where when he reaches for his implements and
Bangs
fumbles
the
them,
tray, yeah.
and his hands are shaking. And he picks one up and turns, and Sam starts begging him not to do this.
It's like, Jack.
He covers that microphone. From that moment until he uncovers the microphone,
he's actually Jack, right?
yeah, we see a man who is as scared as
His face is covered too by his own arm. Like you
right.
don't
He
actually
pulls
see
the mask up but covers the thing, and yeah. So his whole performance there is voice. At that moment, it's body language and voice, but the voice it ripped my heart out because Jack is scared. He doesn't want to do this. And then he uncovers the mic, and now he's all
back.
business again. It's fucking haunting.
So I think.
Can we jump to
go
the
ahead.
scene when he's covered in blood and he's
Sure. Yes.
It's like because that is the bit that seems Python-esque to me, which is he turns around and he's in a nice office and his coat is covered in blood and he's like, "Oh, Sam, how are you today?" And he's stripping his jacket off, and then we stay tight on that angle, and then we hear, "Daddy," and we realize that his daughter
daughter's in
is
the room.
in the room, like playing with blocks. Go on,
Don't worry, Mommy, you'll be here soon.
Go on, put it on, big boy. I won't look at you, wee wee.
Right.
That's so Python. It's ridiculous.
Yes.
And I didn't know that Terry Gilliam was of the Pythons. So also, this makes more sense.
So any time in any Monty Python thing that you see art, like he's the artist. He does all of the weird like the angels and the cherubs and all that.
So he-
like weird monster.
he's
stuff.
the visual artist.
He's a visual artist.
So is he's the Holy Grail cover artist? I assume all the Pythons in the Holy Grail. Okay,
Yep.
cool.
So he does that. So he was, and then of course he writes and directs and acts
Sure.
in a lot of them, but he was primarily their artist for everything.
See, when we did the two. Oh my God, I'm blanking on his name. Jim Jarmusch. When we did the two,
Wow.
I know it's early for me.
It's fair enough.
It's been a long week. Carl.
Yeah, we lost a week, buddy.
But no, when we did the Jarmusch episodes, I got a text from you at one point where you basically just said like, "Thank you so much for introducing me to Jim Jarmusch."
Yep.
When I obviously didn't get to watch it all in one
Right.
sitting, but when I started this movie, I made it about halfway through. I immediately went to Amazon. I opened Terry Gilliam's Wikipedia page on my phone. Haven't got a chance to get to any of it yet, but I've discovered the new director that I'm going to become
awesome.
fascinated with. This movie's incredible. We watched a lot of incredible movies.
Yeah.
But this movie pushes a certain set of buttons that goes back to when I'm like 14, and I had just discovered in comic books it was called the British Invasion. It happened in the early 90s, and it's all those British Vertigo. This Terry Gilliam, to me, the buttons he presses are the Alan Moore buttons,
Yes.
the Sandman, Neil Gaiman buttons,
buttons.
Grant Morrison, early Grant Morrison. Like it's that like subversive, dark, deeply satirical, and not satirical in like that flippant American
No,
satire.
not at all. It's
That this is acerbic criticism. But he makes it funny in the way that only the Brits can, even though he's American.
yeah.
But like he's this guy is pushing those buttons, and I fucking love it.
That's awesome.
I'm really, really excited to watch
Oh,
The
that's
Adventures
sweet.
of Baron Munchausen.
Dude, it's great. I almost feel like in the interim, if you have time, you should throw Time Bandits in there just so you can have like the perspective. And we could do that as like a bonus episode somewhere. I think it's important to, because this is
have
his
it all
trilogy.
yeah.
You know, but you don't have to watch them in order, which is great because they're completely separate ideas. It's just each story tells a different.
There's, the fascination with the Muppets that everyone has. I don't really have it. Do you?
I don't know. I
Muppets
enjoy
Puppet
like the Muppets, like the
Treasure Island or whatever.
No, I mean I love the Muppets Christmas Carol. I like the original show, and like I think Jim Henson was an amazing
genius,
and like the Dark Crystal. I think is. I'm more of a fan of like the Dark Crystal.
This
his
felt
darker
like
shit.
the Dark Crystal to me in a lot of ways.
Yeah. But no, there is definitely an obsession with like the Muppets and like the Sesame Street-y kind of stuff.
I've never gotten that. Just like I'll admit it right here, I don't get the fascination and the like, oh, you've got to see Pee-wee's Playhouse or the Pee-wee's Big Adventure or whatever.
This is a fun romp, whatever. It's just like a basic comedy.
I've watched it and I just don't get it. It doesn't hit for me. But the Muppets thing.
It's Tim Burton's first movie.
My buddy Mike Rutecki, Time Bandits is his favorite film.
Yeah, you were saying that.
Of all time. Yeah. And every time I look at pictures and I see like seeing Brazil, I think I understand a little bit more what that movie must be, but I always avoided it because to me I was like, this is like an offshoot of the Muppets obsession.
Oh, it isn't at all.
No, I know.
Yeah.
I'm getting that.
Yeah,
I'm getting that now, but like I always avoided it because I was.
I don't think there's a single Muppet in it.
No, but
that sort of.
It had that. It looked like that. It had
like labyrinthy kind of.
Yeah. It had that. I love Labyrinth.
Right.
Absolutely love Labyrinth, but it had that feel to me, so I always just avoided it because. And also, when it was the wrong time in my life, I was just balls deep in Tarantino films
right.
and watching The Godfather every other day.
I don't want to watch some like young kid having adventures with little people.
I'm watching Road to Perdition and I'm watching Jude Law take pictures of corpses and I'm like, then Mike is like, Time Bandits, dude, it's like this adventure comedy. And I'm like, no,
well, fuck you. Yeah.
I'm like, keep talking to me about music, but your taste in movies is clearly subpar. It was so bad. But the signs. This is a set design note. Moving back to Brazil.
Yeah.
When we first meet Tuttle, and he is removing the screws on the wall.
Oh yeah, with that huge
awesome push-pull
device.
screwdriver.
Yeah.
I noticed on the wall the Gilliam's visual humor and his visual references to other scenes in this movie is amazing. It creates this visual lattice work. In other movies, a lot of times the plot, and we've talked about some large idea stuff. This movie is you don't want to miss a frame.
No.
And there's a little sign on the wall in Sam's house that says "Do not touch" on his wall. And you're like, oh, no. So because the way that this world works is those rules are everything.
Yes.
Everything is a violation of everything else. And you realize that this isn't even really his space.
No, it isn't. It's his apartment. It's his domicile. And
Yes.
It's not his fucking space.
No, it's four walls.
He can't touch anything.
And Central Services is able to just requisition his apartment.
Oh, they do? Yeah.
They give him a receipt for it, and they're like, well, you don't live here anymore.
don't live here
Here's your
anymore.
receipt.
Bye.
And they kick him out, and it's not his apartment anymore. It's like, even though his mom is rich and he's ostensibly friends with the head of information, paperwork
doesn't matter.
Yeah,
Yep.
nothing. Everything is transient. No, there is no permanence. It's that weird thing that you were talking about at the beginning, where everything is removed from everything else.
Yep.
It's like you can't. And, oh my God! I just realized when he's in the truck with Jill, what infuriates her is that he touched her.
Yes.
Even. And eventually they get past that, but
Right.
even
But the physical contact
is stunning.
Even the food is removed from the food. It's so they have the when they're at the
It's the
restaurant.
veneer and the
it's
reality.
the veneer and the reality. It's the picture of the beautiful steak, and then it's that weird it's mashed food. It's
And one thing I noted about that, which is I think really important, everything that they eat looks like beef tartare of
Yes.
various colors.
Yes.
But I think it's important that they don't just serve you the food, they serve you the picture.
the picture on top. Yeah, it's in a little spindle on the
Right.
Yeah.
So what you get is literally a face, a formless glob, but at eye height on every plate is a picture of the food you're supposed to be eating or whatever.
Right.
So they're not just serving you the food, they're serving you the fantasy.
The fantasy of that. Yeah.
That's so fucking smart. This movie is so well thought out. I don't think anything is really. There's a lot of fun throwaway stuff, like the triplets, twins joke.
Oh, sure, but that's not world building, but it's giving you the sense of these people are real.
Well, and as a visual artist, what he's doing is he's fleshing out the little background details
exactly.
that add to the full picture.
Yeah. It's fleshing it out. It's giving it life.
And one of the things that I really, really loved was, you remember when he goes to deliver the refund check to Mrs. Buttle?
Yeah, and she's being a human and and crying.
The
And
disconnect between the two of them is stunning. Where she's, "What have you done with his body?" And she's
I just want to know what happened to
crying.
his body. What
And
did you do
he's
with his
trying to
body?
get her to sign forms. And when it's weird because you see that some part of Sam wants to break out of this world. He's not happy where he is. He sees that something's wrong, but he has those reflexive where she's like, "You people arrested him wrongly." He's like, "Well, actually, that was a different department.
It's not me.
Not really my." And then, "What did you do with his body?" He goes, "Not my department, ma'am. I'm just really here to just deliver the check."
Yeah.
But the fact that he wanted to hand deliver the check anyway, you can see that conflict in him where some part of him's like, "I'm going to make a human connection."
Because this is the right thing to do, regardless of whether it's the correct thing to do according to our paperwork.
And I think what he realizes when he's there is he goes out and he's like, "I'm going to go
Do a good thing.
and also make a human connection."
Right.
And then when he gets to the point of making a human connection, he doesn't have the tools to do it.
Nope.
So he falls back on his
because
paperwork.
he's seeing a real woman who just lost her husband, who was in mourning, a deep state of mourning, still in shock,
Right.
and screaming at him, "Where's my husband's body?"
And then attacked by her son.
Yes.
And like that he has no
He went from, in his mind, being the hero, doing, I'm going to break out of this thing. I'm going to be a good human being, and he's feeling good about himself doing it. And then, he doesn't have the tools to handle it.
Well, it's crazy. In his dreams, he's flying
He's
and
an
he's
angel of like,
and he fights against the like various dreamlike representations of the system that's holding him down, which is like like his boss, the Ian, what's his name? The
Ian
actor?
Holm.
Ian Holmes, like a rock monster that's keeping him grounded, like holding him back. And we see he has to fight his way through the faceless masses to get to that which he desires. But then I think it's also really telling that when he has that big fight with the samurai and pulls the mask off, we have that like Luke in
The
Empire Strikes Back moment where he realizes he is the samurai.
Yeah.
And that is what we see. There's two times. One, there's probably more, but two that I really remember: when he delivers the refund check, and then later when he first meets Jill, and she's like, "Get out of my car! Get out of my car! I need you to get out of my cab." And he's like, "As an officer of the Intelligence Retrieval Instrument, I'm placing you under arrest now, driver. I'll blow your fucking head off."
Yeah.
And you realize that he, in his head, just like all of us, he wants to be the hero. He knows what he should do. He knows that his dreams are lofty and he aspires to them.
Right.
But at the same time, he is a government employee. He is working for this monolith. He is, in a weird way, I'll use the term as a broad stroke, but in a weird way, he is also the villain.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Like,
He's part of the system.
he's part of the
He
system.
gets promoted to an even bigger part of that system.
Right.
So it's like,
he literally...
he's in the middle of that. He is part of that system.
There's a weird duality to the moment when all of the troops have their guns on Jill, and he tells them, "Stop!" And they all do. They all stop and turn.
Because he's wearing the badge.
So one part of my brain, it's amazing what that scene accomplishes, because one part of my brain watching that, I'm like, oh, this is the moment where like you trick the robots into not killing your friend, and now you're going to make your daring escape.
Right.
And that's what you can tell. That's what's going on in his head. He's like, I'm going to make my daring escape. But then you look at it from Jill's perspective, and
she doesn't know who he is.
right. So all she knows is that some high-level official who controls all these, jackbooted stormtroopers
Just said,
essentially,
"Don't shoot her," and they all obeyed him.
stopped. He sees himself as this hero rescuing this damsel. She sees him as a faceless bureaucrat who controls an army.
Yeah.
And what's crazy? Both are true.
Both are absolutely true at the same time.
It's fucking stunning how good this movie, like how well this movie's built. Now the spook who's like hiding out in the hallway.
Yes.
There's that hilarious visual gag where he looks down and he sees like a dress shoe and like 50 cigarettes. And then you pan up and there's a dude behind, like watching around the corner smoking a cigarette, and you realize that he probably hasn't moved.
He hasn't moved
all day.
Just
half his face and like cigarette after cigarette. There's a mountain of cigarettes on the ground. It's so fucking funny. Then later, when he gets to information retrieval and they give him that half an office,
The half
which
office,
again,
he's sharing the desk
so
with the guy next
funny.
door.
The visual humor of that scene is so fucking funny. But in the background is a poster that's been cut in half by the division of the offices, and it's half of basically that guy. It's the guy in the hat, the trench coat, the like spook looking
so it's
guy.
just half of
it's
his
half of his face watching Sam's back.
Yep.
And you only see half of the thing, but I think it's the sign is the suspicion breeds confidence
Yeah, I think
sign.
it is too.
And you realize that Gilliam's not only like referencing like that what we've seen visually earlier with that like weird like cloak and dagger guy, but also that in a weird way, so far Sam is like that Sam is always being scrutinized, and that you realize everybody's being scrutinized. The posters are watching you. It's like the 1984 thing where Big Brother is watching.
Yeah, and they're watching the watchers, and the watchers are watching the watchers watching. It's like there's constant state of being watched.
It's insane, and everything has a paper trail and triplicate.
Yeah.
You know, like, what do we see when Sam is in Ian Holmes' office and he's like, I'll bring this. I just need you to sign this sheet, Mr. Holmes. And also the 2 receipts. You know, there's the top sheet, there's the pink sheet, there's the yellow sheet.
Right.
Like, you get the sense that everyone's going to get a sheet. And by the way, I think that when you watch... I can't remember his boss's name, but when you watch Ian Holmes' face as he's like, I hurt my hand when he banged his hand.
Oh,
on the
yeah,
thing.
and I can't sign.
I can't sign. Limper said, what a pathetic creature I am. But he's still the boss. And I think there's a reason he's the boss. I think he's a crafty, clever man.
Yes.
Because when Sam is signing...
He's almost smiling like...
Because
No, he's signing
later,
it.
he gets charged. Sam gets charged with forging an intelligence officer's signature, and it's that moment that he's charged with.
Yep.
So I think Ian Holmes' character wants to keep Sam, and he's putting that in his back pocket.
Oh, absolutely.
Because he can fucking sign his name.
Yeah, but he's like, oh, my
He could even
wrist. I can't-
scribble.
Yep.
But he puts on this, like, I might as well hang myself now, Sam. Oh, you are too good to me. Oh, Sam, I'm so pathetic. And then he's like, would you? And he's like, I'll sign it for you, sir. And his face, remember Dark Bilbo from when Bilbo goes all like, rah. But
Oh, yes.
Dude, there's a total moment where he has his eyes settle. And you realize, like, oh, he's not actually flustered.
Nope.
This
Not at
was
all.
a
He
thing.
knows exactly what he is doing.
Yeah, so now he's like, there, Sam forged my signature, and now he's got
Now I've
one.
got that.
It's that fucking weird. Have you seen Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy?
Oh, yeah.
It's that weird thing. Okay, thank you. It's that weird thing where people who are all ostensibly on the same side are just getting little bits of things on everybody. So you've got, like, it's not like a literal file, but you've got your blackmail
You've got
file.
your blackmail file.
Where if you ever need a favor, well,
There it is.
well, you know, there was that one time at that Christmas party where you got awfully drunk, and I don't know if you remember, but I don't know, I saw you take £12 out of Bill's wallet. And
Yep.
anyway, would you just sign this for me? Like, it's
Right,
one
yeah,
of
it's
those
one of those,
fucking
yep.
things, and it's awesome. Oh my god, it's so cool. I just there's everything in here. Everything in here is in this movie is so. It's like the Tinker Tailor thing, where I read an interview with the costumer, and the costumer sat down with the director and the screenwriter
Of Tinker?
of Tinker Tailor
Okay.
Soldier Spy for it was like a month or more. They did a series of meetings to decide what cut of suit, type of suit,
Oh my
fabric of
God.
suit that everyone would wear, whether they'd keep the button buttoned or unbuttoned, what if they'd have anything in the buttonhole, and every single costuming thing signifies something
I
else.
love that so much.
I know, it's amazing.
Those, as we've talked about it before, it's those things as a viewer or an audience member that you would never know unless you seek out the documentaries.
Right, but it works on you
it
subconsciously.
works on you, dude. It's like doing table work.
Yeah.
Before you even get into like blocking a scene, it's like you'll develop these backstories and you'll have pages upon pages of shit the audience will never be
Never know
aware
about,
of.
but you can bring them.
But it informs that subtlety or these moments. It's like, I love that.
There's a couple.
I love that. I love that Winona Ryder is
the guy.
Hank.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, there's a couple. And all of the. It wasn't just like okay, here's something that we're gonna do. The actors were made aware. So there's scenes in Tinker Tailor where a lot of people just glaze over, where it's just a bunch of old men sitting around a table talking. But you can watch Gary Oldman note the cufflinks that, you know, not Kenneth Branagh, the other famous King's Speech.
Colin Firth.
Colin Firth. You can, because we ultimately find out, I'm jumping to Tinker Tailor briefly, we find out that Colin Firth has been cheating with Smiley's wife.
Right.
So he notes what Colin Firth is wearing, and you can see actors noting ties. You can see actors noting like the check that they're wearing that day and making assessments. And
that would not have been there otherwise.
When you watch the scene more closely, you realize they're not just talking. Everyone is testing. Everyone else.
I fucking love that.
It's so good. But
God, I love movies and actors and people and things.
When I started watching Brazil, it oscillated back and forth between what I thought was like a critique of a police state, because the first thing we see is these terrorist attacks. It's a ruthless minority. And you're like, oh my God, like how Muslim Americans are being persecuted now. And I'm like, okay, I got it. I'm about to watch V for Vendetta, but like directed by Terry Gilliam. And then we get to Sam's office, and the moment Bilbo Baggins, Ian Holm, closes the door, everyone fucking gets to the nearest screen, and they all start watching a movie,
a Western, yeah.
And then we know they're watching a Western, and Ian Holm gets suspicious and walks over and opens the door, but everyone's bustling. They're like, everyone's so on point.
The music cuts out.
And then they close the door. And then opens it, and everyone's... And then later there's the tag-on joke where he left the door open, and he goes, boss is getting suspicious.
Right.
And there's an even better tag-on joke where Sam knows that that's what we do, is like, what's playing today? And he goes, Casablanca. Like, that's what they do at work, is they watch movies. And then he covers for his coworkers. As Sam is leaving the office, we hear Casablanca playing in the background, and Sam knows the line that's coming up, so he says to Ian Holm, here's looking at you, to cover the line delivery, and then closes the door really quick. It's so fucking... So then I'm like, oh, now I'm watching a British comedy of manners.
Yes,
okay.
exactly.
And then all of a sudden we get, suspicion breeds confidence. And I'm like, wait, nope, it is V Vendetta. I've got it.
It's living in so many worlds at the same time.
It does. And
which is why I love Gilliam movies in the first place, is why he's like in my top 3.
And as just a fantasy film, it's brilliant.
Yeah.
And... as a neo-noir, like almost like pseudo-crime noir film.
Yeah.
It's brilliant as well.
It's a mistaken identity thing. It's like all those pieces are there.
There's a Hitchcock film in the heart of this. Yeah. It's amazing. And then like we get the score changes where we have sci-fi score.
I love that almost half of it is some variation of the song Brazil. It's peppered in there throughout the entire score. I heard the
song pop again and again, and I heard this like music, little stings that were from it. But I didn't notice that. I'll have to watch it again. But one of the things that I noticed is later when he uses the special lift to get up to Heltman's office. Right. And he gets up there. The score starts shifting because now he's in a new suit. He has a trench coat. He has that wide brim fedora.
Now he's in a detective story.
It changes from like the the fantasy score to like it turns into like that weird soft
LA noir.
And then also the second he gets into his office, harsh backlighting, so we get the really stark shadows, that fedora silhouette. And then this is another moment where Sam becomes hyper competent, where he's like looking through the Heltman's desk, and he looks like an American private eye. Yep. He's looking at the desk.
Totally cool, calm, collected, knows what he's looking for. Turns to his
left, finds the back room. Mr. Heltman. And there's no nervousness. He's a slick private dick just checking things out. Yep. When he gets to that back room too, it's amazing because you get the harsh silhouette. Now we're dealing. It's not like Sin City harsh, but we're getting those faint, like the crime noir shadows. And he's dressed like a detective. And he gets to the typewriter. And he's like, oh, now we're in a spy movie.
Now we're in a spy movie.
Where he's like, I'm going to make Jill dead. And we get that like, the score changes what you're watching.
Yep.
It's crazy. You go like, oh, I'm watching a detective film. Now I'm in a spy thriller. Then you go back and he finds Jill in like her flowing golden thing. And then the score changes. And now we are watching a sci-fi romance. And you're like,
how many styles of movie did I just watch in the last 10 minutes?
So good. This is going back to the beginning of the movie. We jumping around a little bit on this, but I like it.
Yeah. It's all good. Well, this movie is very strange.
And also, apparently, when people watched this movie for the first time, it was in a different order,
and some shit was cut out, and yeah.
I love a good technology of the future breakfast scene. And this movie has a great one.
Yeah, tell with his sort of Rube Goldberg breakfasty.
Blade Runner has awesome moments where basically you get the sense that Ridley Scott was like, okay, set designer, do some fun shit. We'll come and film it tomorrow or next week. And then when they come back, it's like, oh, and the cabinet slides out of the wall and the eggs are boiling. And, and then Fifth Element. Fifth Element is another amazing, like, new technology breakfast scene. I love what people come up with. And this one in particular, because I'm always a fan of Back to the Future.
Yes.
I'm always a fan
of
technological breakfast scenes that fuck up. Where it's
with
like
the fruit thing that comes out of the ceiling. Fruit, please.
Yeah.
Fruit, please.
And then this one, when the tea pours all over his toast, and there's that hilarious bit of physical comedy where he
can't get the toast in his mouth because it's cut in the center.
It's flipping like left and right, but he can't ever get it into his mouth. And then he drinks a glass of sugar.
Yes.
Like there's enough tea in there to melt the sugar, but then he just drinks like sugar, and he's like, nope, not right. There's something so charming about that.
I love that.
And then again, there are other. I mean, I've been saying, the movie's like half comedy, half like really paranoid, like Big Brother's watching you movie with like fun little accents of other films thrown in. But the physical comedy, the Python-esque comedy, like where his mom's hat is a shoe.
Yes,
his mom's hat is a high-heeled
fucking shoe.
It's a high-heeled shoe.
Yeah.
And then
and his mom's best friend who's constantly going to I have an acid man. I know you're into plastic surgery, but she's constantly getting more and more fucked up. Hey, as he says, in the next 2 weeks I'll be just fine.
And like, every time you see her, there's more bandages.
The one point she's actually in a wheelchair. She's like,
I love that her right hand is fully bandaged and two of her fingers on the left hand are individually bandaged. And now her bandages, and she's blind, apparently.
She's blind, yes.
She's blind and her bandages are seeping.
Oh,
and
it's
she's
so fucking gross.
She's hooked up to intravenous bags.
Yep.
And she's like, he says my complications had a few complications. But he says I'll be springing around like a light young spring chicken in no time. And you're like, you're literally melting.
You're literally melting.
You are melting away to nothing.
That's so gross.
Who is the actor who plays Sam's mom's plastic surgeon? I recognize him.
So he was.
What do I know him from?
Have you seen Moulin Rouge? Or
I've seen Moulin Rouge, but that's not where I know him from.
Okay, hold on. His name is Jim Broadbent.
Okay.
He's been in a bunch of stuff,
like
man.
A bajillion things. He's in Gangs of New York.
Yeah.
I don't think that's where I know him from either.
You would probably. I mean, I know him mostly from Moulin Rouge because that's a guilty pleasure movie that I have to watch all the time. He just crops up all over the place.
The second I saw him, he's often like color character.
Yeah, very much so. He was sort of not that voice. I don't know what that voice was,
but it's sort of like.
But it wasn't him. But it's like, oh, everything's going so well.
Right.
Like he's very.
It's that type,
over the top kind of. Oh, you're going to be here for a time or two.
Yeah, and like oh my god, the prosthetics when he's stretching her face
out.
Those prosthetics are so good.
Yeah.
When he's like he alligator clips her cheeks back like by her ears. And her face is so like distended and distorted, and he's like, "Oh, just a little trim with a knife here, and we're going to cut it back here."
And then he starts putting the rouge and the weird makeup on her and shit.
And what's weird is it's funny, and then he puts the plastic wrap over her face, saran wraps her face, and she turns, and it becomes horrific for a moment. Yeah. And then we're back to like funny, and then paranoid, and then funny, and suspicion breeds confidence. But that saran wrapped horror, the obsession with plastic surgery.
This movie is like a really weird like mental hopscotch. Like it's like you're tossing the stone and you're gonna be tap pop pop, like you're bouncing in and out of all these really weird genres, and and laughing in one moment and being completely disturbed in another. Or even in the same moment, you're like laughing, but like, why am I laughing?
Disturbing.
This is really disturbing.
It's also disturbing. Like, the plastic surgery scenes are like that for me, where I'm just like, I love the acid. Oh, I know you like a knife band, but I'm an acid girl. And I like it in his delusion at the end when he knocks her casket over. She's a
all
puddle.
melted jelly.
She's just she's like she's been in a casket of acid basically, and she's just like falls on the ground.
So I have a thought about the end of this movie.
Okay, let's jump to the end of this
Shall
movie.
we?
Yes.
So we already know that he has his sort of dream sequence that he escapes and lives happily ever after.
The movie like steps out of reality from the moment where Jack covers the microphone and then starts. What happens is he covers the microphone. He's like, I'm scared too, and then he gets shot in the head. From that moment forward, everything is in Sam's head.
Right.
And at the end we return to and we see
like,
Sam
he's gone now.
Right, Jack and
lost
Heltman.
him.
Yeah, are like, well, he's gone away from us.
So I think that Jack saved him in a way, like that it is his friend, and he did the last good thing that he could possibly do, which is not kill him and set him up, because he's catatonic, but he's living a fantasy where he gets the girl of his dreams, and he's smiling and he's singing Brazil. Like, he's got a smile on his face.
In a weird way, it was a mercy.
So that's
so
where I come away
dark.
from. Yeah, and it is. And that has to be the answer, because you know that Jack is really affected when he sees that it's Sam there.
And he's the most...
And he's stuck. He's stuck. He has to do what he has to do.
Jack is one of the few characters that has a human side. I'm not going to say a lot of the characters in here are very well used caricatures,
but they're not human.
No. Sam, we see duality. Jill, we see some fun duality.
Right.
Jack is almost the most poignant duality, because we see that I'm like losing it in front of the mirror, and I'm sorry, I'm just a businessman.
Yeah.
Why don't you stay away and I think in a weird way when he's like, we've always been close, haven't we, Sam? Well, until this blows over, stay the hell away from me. I think that's a warning.
Yeah. Oh, it definitely is.
It's like, you are wading into deep water, and think about what that could mean. Stay away from me. What's my job at here?
Stay away from me.
Don't-
to torture people until they break or die.
I don't want to see you again until you're good, dude, because you might end up in my chair. And
like
you've
he did.
seen, like, how do you think I feel? Like, come on, man.
Yeah.
I like that. I like that reading where Jack sort of, because Jack is a human.
Yep.
Jack is a real, we see Jack's humanness.
And you know that he's been doing this forever. He's the guy that the government put in charge to do this. And the only reason that he fucked up the one time is because he got the wrong paperwork. Right?
So
you know he's fucking good at his job.
Yeah. So he would be capable
of doing that.
So he basically, he knew what buttons to push or what pain to inflict, or like some futuristic post-hypnotic, but he knew how to push
to
Sam
get him there
into his own head.
Yeah.
And I think that that's so dark, but in a weird, it's like the sickest happy ending that you've ever seen.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's really, and also I will say that this has been the most upsetting. Eraserhead was fairly upsetting.
Well, that's upsetting for a different. It's upsetting way. Because it's like you're literally watching a nightmare.
This movie was upsetting because of its bleakness.
Yeah.
It's so fanciful, and so there is romance and there's love and there's hilarious lines like, I killed you, I made you dead, and care for some necrophilia. Like, that's funny as fuck. Yeah. But at the same time, it ends with Jill is dead. Yeah. Jill has been killed, so the woman of his dreams is dead.
Oh, and he's delivered that information in the coldest way possible.
The most.
With no, like, oh, she's dead. It's like, oh, yes, I made her dead. Oh, no, well, then she died twice.
Yeah, like, there seems to be some confusion because it appears to have happened twice. And he's like, twice. So I faked one, and now she's really
actually dead.
So we find out Jill's dead.
But there is no, I'm terribly sorry, Jill is dead. It was like, you find out not directly by somebody saying that she is in fact dead or seeing a body. It's like, it's him working it out.
It's not even told. He's not even told that she's dead.
No.
He's told there was an irregularity in her paperwork.
Yeah, right.
She
seems to have died twice.
People are paperwork. On paper, she was killed twice.
Yeah.
And you're like...
Then you see him work it out.
You're...
like,
yeah.
Yeah.
I want so badly to... because you know what? It's interpretive and it is a movie. I'm glomming on to your theory that, because even though this ending is not, when I say terrible, I don't mean bad, I mean good, but it's terrible to see.
It's a terrible, yeah, you're left with that.
That is the best possible horrible ending that you could have.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I'm buying this movie.
Fantastic.
I'm buying the fuck out of this movie.
Buy the fuck out of it, Max.
My note.
We never make mistakes. When did they switch to the metric system?
Right. Yeah, that's hilarious. No, they've switched back to metric on us.
They switched back to metric.
No, they switched back to metric on us when they dropped the whole plug through the floor.
Right after saying, "Oh, we never make mistakes."
I wrote down, there's little stuff in here. You could spend a whole day just picking out the tiny little
Oh, absolutely, which
bits
is why I
and
love
bobs.
Gilliam.
There's background conversation where they're walking through the restaurant and you hear someone else talking about them. Medical gift vouchers. You can spend them for, for any procedures, including gynecological procedures. And Sam's like, ugh. But like medical gift vouchers, right? 2018, here we are. The cost of insurance is so fucking incredibly high that, like, well, it's not just
there's GoFundMe, like Kickstarters for fucking like I need to get surgery done.
It's not just there's a GoFundMe who's like, if you guys please help me, I need surgery or I will die, because insurance is so expensive in America. But this medical gift vouchers thing, this is from my personal life. This last Christmas, when my parents were like, "What do you want for Christmas?" and I jokingly was like, "Well, I mean, how about some health insurance?"
Right.
And my dad was like, "Well, we know a really good dentist who he's a family dentist of ours. Maybe I could do something like your mother and I could put some money into a deposit account with him so that you could go there." And it was literally, when you broke it down, it was literally a gift card to a dentist.
To go to a dentist. Oh my God.
And
that should not be the case.
Right?
Oh my God.
So like it was literally like, well, maybe we could put a credit on an account at like a local medical center and you could go and get medical treatment. That's literally a medical gift card that in all but language.
You can use it for whatever you want.
Right. And that's a
you
real
need a stent put in your heart, you could do that, or, penis enlargement, whatever you need.
Like think about that. It's like, like, oh, okay, well, we've, thank you for coming in, Mr. Peterson. We've treated your arrhythmia, and you just need to take these pills. Your total is going to be $1,000 minus. Would you like to use your $250
you have cashback
medical
on
gift
your
credit? That's where we are now today. How fucked up is that, Carl?
Yeah.
It's, you know what? And then you watch.
It's almost like you're going to get a punch card. It's like your 12th coffee, get your 13th free. It's like, I mean, we're fucking there,
exactly.
man.
It's like, oh, well, we see that you've had several bones set with us. So is there anything else you'd like done while you're here? You do have a $500 medical credit because you've had 4 bones
Jesus
set.
Christ.
That's in a fucking weird way. Yeah. That's where we are. My cousin, I won't say his name. One of my cousins works in he works as a lab tech. And he's been saying for the last like year or so, he's like, hospitals all over in small towns are getting shut down and everyone's being transferred to large central hospitals because as a business model,
they don't work.
There's no point. The small hospitals in a small town, like, what are you going to do? You're going to deliver like 2 babies a year, set a couple broken bones, treat someone for like a head injury.
The ledgers don't balance.
Right.
You're not profitable enough.
It's not. Why even bother staying open?
It's like closing. They just closed the Family Video on West Bay.
Yeah. It's
like closing the small branch of a video store or something. It's the same fucking thing.
Exactly.
Oh.
So, and we used to live over in Maine, and now it's like he's like all these. Maine there's a lot of very, very isolated rural communities. It's like now someone has a heart attack. It's not like a quick ambulance ride 10 minutes to the local or 20 minutes or 30 minutes. You lay there and you're dying and you're waiting for a helicopter to come and fly you up to Bangor or fly you to Augusta because the big or fly you to Portland Medical because the big hospitals are profitable.
Healthcare should never be a business.
It shouldn't be a business.
I mean, we're not getting on our soapbox, but we are. Healthcare should never be a fucking business.
Or medical gift vouchers should be a real thing.
Right, exactly. Because I could use a couple.
Every Christmas and birthday, I'd just be like, how about a medical gift card?
I want in my stocking, in the toe, an orange, because you have to have an orange.
You have to have an orange.
And then medical gift vouchers.
And then lump of coal, because that's funny.
And that's funny, because like teehee, I get it. No, you're a good boy.
But don't burn it, though, because like the environment is fucked.
Exactly. Tic Tacs. And also a $20 gift card
I love Pez.
to the State Theater.
Dude, Pez. Like a fun little Pez dispenser.
I always like a little Pez.
Those are great on
Like
Christmas.
I love a yo-yo. Like the kid shit. A Matchbox car and medical gift vouchers.
So this movie we watched,
I'm 40. I'm not getting any younger, Max.
Right, yeah. And you're going to need
Fuck.
to be patched up occasionally coming up here.
Dude, I'm terrified. Like, honestly, I'm terrified. I turned 41 in July, and I'm like, boy, I really hope nothing happens because I can't fucking afford it.
Really quick, checking in. I think you stopped smoking on our second episode. Still not smoking?
Still not smoking, yeah. It was beginning of October that I stopped smoking.
Okay, so October was before we even started recording the new episodes.
Yeah.
So this entire season so far, you haven't smoked.
Yeah, smoke-free.
Dude, I'm going to keep checking in like every couple episodes because I love it.
Oh, thank you.
I
Me
love
too.
like this
Yeah.
little clock that we've got going where it's like part of my brain's like, how long can you
How
hold
long
out?
can you go? Like, I haven't, the fucking fucked up part about it.
See,
Jesus, Carl.
You must be jonesing.
I am. No, but I haven't even reached my current my personal record yet.
Really?
Which is a year and a half.
Okay.
I went
So we'll
18,
check in season 2.
I went 18 months, and then I don't know if it's usually something fucked up will happen, and I fall back
Bumps
to it.
you off, yeah.
Yeah. And then I'm like, I'm gonna smoke every cigarette ever made.
Well, I owe myself 1 year, 8 months.
I owe myself 18 months of backlog not smoking
Well,
cigarettes.
look, I haven't smoked in like a year and a half, so a carton's not going to kill me, right? I wanted to. You want to just burn through some notes?
Yeah.
Look how many fucking notes I have. They're the kids. Okay, wait. First, the nuclear Pleasantville, that little like town of the future where it's like power now, pleasure later, and it's
all the billboards for it, but there's nothing being constructed.
well, and also we see this like we see Sam driving.
Mm-hmm.
We see this. We realize later that it's like a little set, a mini set, but we see these like perfect.
Oh, the idyllic.
The idyllic like nuclear power plants with like little subdivided homes in between them, and then that fucking the bum with the bottle of whiskey like stumbles into the frame,
Yeah,
and then
like-
we pan out, and you're in like a mechanical wasteland.
Yes.
Of like what the reality of nuclear power plants, open flames shooting out of pipes, just dirt and shit all over the
Ductwork
ground.
and wires everywhere.
And that's the first time that
Everywhere.
or just ductwork everywhere. By the way, Eraserhead in this movie, the attention given to ductwork,
Yeah.
and like serpentine, even the floor cleaners, they look like snakes working over.
Because everything is connected to piping or a duct of some sort.
Right. There's a lot of attention given to ducts and piping, and I wasn't able to unpack it, but I did note that both use pipes to create an industrial wasteland feel, like open pipes in a house.
It's like a cardiovascular system or a nerve network. Everything is connected
like a
in
sick
some way.
heart in a way. Yeah. This is the first when we go to that little Pleasantville place. This is the first time we see like children, and they're playing cops and robbers. But you realize that the robbers aren't robbers; they're just like civilians.
They're civilians turning each other in.
Right. And my favorite part is there's a kid in the
Body bag?
Yeah, it's in like he's in like a leaf bag with holes cut out, and he's in the body bag.
Yep.
And one of the a little girl in a dress has a fake machine gun, maybe fake, maybe real.
Maybe real.
The guns the kids have look really real. So
Yeah.
she's holding another child at gunpoint with a machine gun while he's got a little kid has his hands
on the
against the
wall.
wall, and a third little kid is patting him down.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, look, it's New York City. Stop and frisk. What in the fuck? What are we watching? This movie was made in 1985, and I'm like, oh, it's kids playing New York City cops.
Yeah.
Stop and frisk. Awesome. But, dude, it's haunting. And then what I thought, I wrote down, really, though, we're all still children. Nothing changes when we grow up.
Right.
Because you realize that, like, the games kids play, those carry over into adulthood. When you play cops and robbers, sometimes kids grow up
to be cops.
who are cops. They're kids who
They're
grew
kids
up.
who grew up. And some of them are robbers.
It's like, it kind of like hurt, but it also kind of opened my eyes to how the world works, which is like, oh, we don't ever change.
No.
We
just take on more responsibility and get maybe sometimes more organized, maybe because you have to fit into
maybe
a particular.
little, but like when you're a kid, this might seem like a digression, but it will make sense.
That's okay.
But when you're a kid, you look at the adults and you're like, they have it together. You
Right.
trust them. You're like,
Yes.
they've got everything figured out. And when you
Little
get
do
here,
you know.
when you
they
get
have
here,
no
you're like,
fucking idea.
no one is driving this.
There is no driver on the bus.
Grant Morrison has a great quote about it. He's like, the reason I don't believe in conspiracy theories is when you realize that the people who are quote unquote running the world are about a decade older than me.
Yeah.
He's like, there are no like wise old super competent
Right.
like clever men orchestrating the universe. He's like the people who are running the world are not even half a century old. He's like, the people who are alive have only been here for like 4 or 5 decades.
Yeah.
He's like, there is.
They don't
He's
know
like,
what the
there are
fuck
no
is going-
cabals.
No.
No one knows what the fuck they're doing. We're all just doing our best. That's all that's happening.
It's like when you're nervous about going to work for this really nice fine dining restaurant in a big city. You're like, oh my god, they have this shit so together. And then on your
You see the
second day
kitchen.
of training, you're like, how is this even working? Like, how do they even get food out? Like, what the fuck?
I totally had that experience. I was like, I'm expecting like polished steel,
Yep.
and then you're like,
and you get
oh,
kind of nervous and like, oh my god, this is gonna...
this kitchen looks like the country kitchen.
right, yeah.
But it's you guys are just putting out like fish eggs and country.
But we
kitchen's putting
do
out
do that
pancakes.
though, don't we? We put it's almost like a level of expectation in some way, because it's like being the kid and like and the adults. There's the idea that they've got everything under control and you're good to go. This is fine dining restaurant in a big city. They've got to have their shit together. But when you get in the kitchen, you're like, this place is fucked up. How is it even
Right.
running? Like,
You realize half the service staff is drunk or high.
oh yeah.
And you're like, oh,
fuck?
but then they get to the floor and they're totally competent.
Yeah.
You're like, nothing is real. Everything is a facade.
Yes, exactly.
It's all a facade. Like
Nobody knows what's going on.
There's a book. There's a book called, I wish I could remember the artist's name, but unfortunately it's in Italian, called the Codex Serafinianus.
Mm-hmm.
And what the Codex Serafinianus is this Italian artist did a codex, which is a book that chronicles a civilization's plants, animals, like government system, chronicles its language. And he did it for a civilization that doesn't exist. So he has in there plants that are not real, but they're it's drawings of plants and
drawings of
stuff, but
plants.
it's nothing you can identify. And there's animals you've never seen. And the whole book is written in no known language. It is a language. You can read it and notice structure, and you can notice strange punctuation. But like cryptographers and linguists have been trying to decode it since 1971,
Holy shit.
and no one's been able to crack it. They can't figure out how the language works. So it is literally a guidebook to nothing that you've ever seen, written in a language that you've never heard and cannot possibly learn. And someone asked him in like the mid 2000, like 2008, 2010. Like, what? Come on, give us a hint. Like, people have been fascinated with this book since the 70s when it first came out, and they're like, please, just give us something to work with. Like, we're tearing our hair out. And he's like, what I wanted to do was I wanted to write a book for adults that would give them that same sensation of a child opening a book for the first time.
Fuck me.
And realizing that they can't understand, but knowing that somewhere out there, the bigger people did.
Oh my god.
So seeing something and knowing that someone had the answers, even if you don't, and that feeling of like wanting to know the answers, and just trusting that the answers were out there. I know, and it's gorgeous. It's absolutely gorgeous. It's an art book, so it's fairly expensive, but I've flipped through online. I've looked at some of the illustrations and checked out the language, and it's in my Amazon cart right now.
love it.
But yeah, so this movie, in a weird way, kind of gave me that same feeling, because the world is so well realized. I'm like, I don't necessarily understand what these processes are. But you start
no
the
one's
movie.
holding your hand with it either.
No,
telling you what's going on.
You start the movie going like, oh, okay, so I don't understand this world, but they do. And then halfway through the movie, you're like, no, they don't.
Nope, they have no fucking idea.
Nobody understands what's going on, and I think that's the point.
Isn't that great?
That's the message where you're like, no one's running this
no
world.
one's running the world.
Paperwork just bumps back and forth. They drop a tube.
pneumatic
he
tube,
looks
and that's
at it.
it. Yep.
He fills it out. He fires it up. It comes back.
I don't think there's anyone actually in charge. It's just different departments that are now just this self-contained.
It's like a machine, and the operator has died, and
Yep.
the machine is still running.
It's still going.
And that's horrifying
Yes,
when you realize
is.
it.
When you realize that it's people and human beings that are make up that machine. Yeah.
We've already talked about that. There's a I'm jumping all over, but I want to get my notes out because they're so funny. When he delivers the refund check, that cloak and dagger guy,
yes,
and he's coming down the stairs and he bumps into him. Do you see the huge cloud of smoke that comes out of his mouth? He's got lungs full of smoke.
Just full of smoke.
He hits him and it's like. I wrote down when he first comes to his mother's party. And the butler spins him around, and the other one stuffs a pistol in his face, and he's like, "Where's your invitation? Where's your invitation?" And then I realized that is a natural extension of paperwork culture.
Yeah.
It's. I thought originally it was a joke, like show us your papers, but everybody needs to sign their form and have their you can't enter certain places without paperwork. Like that's how he kicks out central services guys. They don't have the right
form
paperwork.
84, whatever.
So they leave.
And they freak out about not having
and
it.
they get a weird paperwork revenge on him where they use paperwork and legal technicalities to seize his apartment.
Yep.
But even to get into a party, there's a military adherence to where's your invitation, and they have a gun to his head.
Where's your RSVP?
Show me your RSVP. Show me your RSVP or your brains are on the door, buddy.
Yep.
It's fucked up.
And it's his mom's party.
And she comes over and she's like, "Oh, Sam, darling." And they're so pissed that they have to let him in. They're looking at him like,
fuck.
And
wearing his dowdy suit.
When he orders the food in the restaurant, he's like, "I'll take a steak rare." You have to say the number, sir. Whatever number it is. He goes, "It's this one right here." And he goes, "Okay, I'll take that." You have to say the number. It's adherence to the rigor of form. Yes. He's like, "A number 3 then," just like he's saying it to the world, like a number 3 then, very good. 3, like everyone orders by number because it's all.
And you have to adhere to that.
It's so fucking crazy. There's little funny bits that also show how shabby the world is. You'll never for example, you just mentioned his dowdy suit, but when Jack says, "Well, you'll never get," he's like, "I'll go get her." Well, you'll never get anywhere in a suit like that. Try this one on. When you move to new place, his suit is fine when he's in that lower echelon, but when he moves up,
suit's not okay.
It's like the paperwork.
Yep.
He's like, now we're going to change your uniform.
Yep.
And they give him a new number. Mm-hmm. Then his badge has his number. He's like, "You've now switched. You're a new cog. We can't have cogs moving around. We need to create a new cog.
Exactly.
And we've deleted the old cog." But we also get this half a desk joke where things seem to on the absolute surface, everything seems efficient,
perfect, pristine, but it's not.
It's not. And my favorite gag about that is the elevator. When the elevator goes up to the 30th floor, it stops shy of the 30th floor, so he has to step up and out and bend down to close the gate. And then when the elevator gets called back down, it goes all the way up to the 30th floor correctly and then goes back down. And you realize nothing really works.
Right. Yeah.
Nothing works, but it all on the surface appears to. Mm-hmm. And because right before that, we get that highly, that weird kind of fun moment with the desk clerk when he's like, "Don't you want to check my papers?" "No, sir." "Well, I could be anybody." "No, you couldn't,
No, you
sir.
couldn't.
You're at information retrieval, sir." "I want to go to 30th floor, sir." You're like, okay, this is hyper efficient. And then you see the elevator doesn't work and the desks are cut in half. You're like,
which also sort of plays into that whole I wonder if the machine is working. That. The machine is still
it
running,
works.
But there really isn't anybody in charge. That speaks even more to that. It's just going through its thing. It's starting to break down, but there are no overseers to correct any of it.
And when it breaks, they just slap another piece of paper on it.
That or there's panic. Right. There's real panic when things don't work. And I think it's because some of them have figured out there is no one driving the bus. There is no big overseer. It's all just become this this cycle and circle of paperwork, and if it starts to break down, it will completely break down. That's why people panic so much when something small goes wrong.
In some way, it seems kind of like the assembly, the end game of an assembly line consumerist culture. Whereas we always hear about like there's people whose job it is to turn a bolt 1/4 turn.
Yes.
And then the next bolt comes by
The
one
other
corner
one,
turn.
'cause it's efficient.
One corner.
Yeah.
Right. So you can just bang, bang, bang.
It's that
Everybody.
old John Ford. He's a director.
He's a director. We're on a film podcast, so good mistake.
Thank you.
Henry Ford.
Right.
But yeah, it's everyone has that one job. This is my job. And when you compartmentalize that far down, if a crisis arises, no one is equipped to deal with it. Because
All I know how to do is corner turn of the screw.
if no one has the big picture, when you get a
If there's no foreman,
Right. If you get a problem across compartments, everyone's fucked because no one knows how to deal with the big picture because everyone is looking at one. It's like if 100 people trying to paint a painting and no one knows what they're supposed to be painting.
Right.
They just know like my job is to make the line from the upper right corner of my box to the lower right corner. And the next person, it's the most fucked up game of telephone of all time.
Yes.
Because everyone does their
everyone
one
has
little
their
thing.
own phone.
Right. And then when the next person gets what's been done, they're like, this isn't right. And they kick it back. And then they're like, whoa. What
happened?
Why did you kick it back? Why'd you kick it back? I did it right. Here, no, we need to send it to. Okay. I know what to do. And they send it to the next place. And they're like, I've never seen this, but
before.
I know my job is to go from top to bottom because now we're out of sequence.
Yep.
And then the next person gets it and they're like, I don't fucking know what any of this is. I'm just going to do my job.
Yep.
And at the end, you get a mess.
You get a mess.
You get a mess. It's, oh God, it's so funny. Yes, it's.
We're trying to say it and not say it. We're saying it.
We're saying it now. Yeah, it's kind of what the government is exactly. Like we have the department of the left side of pine trees. You're gonna want to talk to the
I feel like
department.
it's always been that way too. It's like we never really grow up. It's the same fucking thing.
But and the other thing is it's that weird childlike thing they do where they're like, now you're the hall monitor,
Right.
Where they give you a title and a position and a badge and a job to do.
Yep.
And
Crossing guard, whatever. Yeah.
And you're like, I am important. I am someone. And if anything contradicts that, you just put your blinders on and you focus on your task.
Yep.
And you're like, well, no, I have some power in this sphere. Like not bashing cops, but I think in a lot of ways that can happen to cops. And I think
sure.
Where you are given authority and a badge and you have a gun and your gun is your symbol of your authority. And in that world now, you are like, this is my sphere. In this sphere, I have this power.
It's not the cop that's the asshole. It's the person that's the asshole.
Right, exactly. It's not a problem with the job. It's a problem with certain people in the job. Because you can get, like, you and I have both had several jobs, like most people of our generation.
Yes.
Where you have an awesome manager. You get a manager who will let things ride because he knows that his workers are competent.
Right.
Or who makes small, subtle corrections when necessary. And then you have the weird fucking... I've worked with two now. There's the managers who are like, here is every rule. I will micromanage everything. And well, you know what happens when you get the manager that micromanages everything? Everything grinds to a halt.
Yep.
Because there's no room for flexibility. It's like... why is your food up? There's still soups on the table. We need to refire this. And now the food is 30 minutes late. And it's like, no, what if I just set the food down and they can take their last bite of soup? What are you talking about?
Right.
Like that hyper anal micromanaging. It's not even necessarily micromanaging. It's, I have these managerial powers and I shall exercise them.
Yes.
And when you do that too much, like we see in this movie, when you exercise too much power in your sphere, or when you don't trust other people
Right.
to do their thing, everything gets just crashed into each other, and nothing happens.
It becomes a log jam, and then there you are.
It's terrible.
And then there you are, in your window with cold food.
You've got food burning in the window. They're refiring food. Your ticket's already been spiked. You don't know what's happening.
Who ran this?
Soups are coming out before appetizers. You're like, what? Where's my gravlax?
There's nothing like dropping a check to a table when they haven't had their apps yet. Like,
wow.
I didn't get any food yet.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Well, and yeah, especially when like the worst is when someone does their job and they seat a table. but then the other person whose job it is to tell you have the table don't tell you have the table.
Oh yeah.
And then the manager comes in and they're like, your table's been here for half an hour. And you're like, which one? I clocked out.
Right. I've already done my paperwork. What are you talking about?
What are you talking about? 21 is you. They've been here for half an hour. They're furious. I had to comp everything. I'm like, comp what? I haven't been there yet.
I haven't taken an order.
What are you even saying to me right now?
I've been home for 10 minutes.
I just discovered that I love bureaucracy comedy.
Isn't it great?
It's hilarious.
It is.
The paperwork
it's
snafus are so funny.
Oh my God, because we all deal with it in some way every day of our lives.
Well,
not to the necessarily extent of the Buttle Tuttle, but
yeah, Buttle Tuttle's a bit extreme. But one of my favorite moments of paperwork, bureaucratic comedy is when he's in his office and he's trying to get out of his office at information retrieval and they keep sending him those tubes.
Yes.
So he pulls a piece of tubing and puts the out
into the
in.
Yes.
So it shoots down the out, up the in, and then you just see, you start hearing like doom, 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 and the pipe starts swelling, and there's a huge explosion of paperwork outside. It blows up and paperwork just rains down from the ceiling.
And there was some very real satisfaction with that happening. This yeah, there
you go.
Explode it.
In a weird way, you know what that was is like that's like a heart attack.
Yep.
We just saw a heart attack and then a ruptured artery.
A ruptured artery in that heart, that cardiovascular system that is that
with all the ductwork and pipes and stuff. I wrote down 5 times the set design.
Yeah.
Wow, this set design is amazing. The scene when he's about to be tortured and we pan out from him in the chair and he is in the most vaulted room you've ever seen. The scale that Gilliam manages to achieve with, I think some of it's painted backdrops.
Oh yeah, it's a lot of it's that composited.
But oh my God, the scale that he manages to convey. You don't see huge scale like that in films a lot because spaces like that either don't exist or they're like hard to get to or impossible to get to.
Or so expensive to like fabricate. Like there's no way to possibly do that on a budget.
Right, like sound stages are enormous, but like if you're going to build a giant set that is you can't, but he manages somehow to convey that sense of space. Those are the sets that really, really blew my mind, was seeing like the high vaulted spaces or seeing like the really intricate. A lot of the places look like they've converted old factories into like offices.
Buildings, yes.
And
especially where he works in the beginning. It's like you're in the basement of a factory somewhere and they just shoved a bunch of desks into it.
Yeah, it looks so cool. Yeah. Everything works. It all works. Oh, I absolutely love it. And then the last, there's 2 other things I wanted to say. I mentioned drone pilots earlier. And you get the sense, do you remember in the end, in his fantasy dream when he's escaping and Tuttle and the rest of the quote-unquote terrorists are dragging you out, and the desk man is zeroing in on people and blowing up bombs?
Oh, yes.
And he just seems like very satisfied, and there's literally video game noises. Yeah, it's like as he's blowing up people.
Humans, yeah.
They... Like nowadays, in a weird way, that is modern warfare.
Well, yeah, they're playing a video game.
Yeah. Actually, a friend of my brother's just went through flight school, and I used to get Snapchats of him, like, flying plane. You have to learn how to fly planes.
Right, of course.
To be a drone pilot, you have to be a licensed pilot. So he was doing, like, cross-country jet fighter trips, and he's a pilot. He graduated flight school. We were all like, oh, congratulations. He's like, I finally graduated. And we're like, right on, man, awesome. Cool. And then the next Snapchat was, like, him standing in front of a drone, and the one after that was just a screen. Just a screen and a joystick.
Jesus Christ, man!
And that's his job now. He flies planes across on the other side of the world and drops payloads on people that are nothing more than
a blip on a screen.
Well, not even just a blip on a screen, but think about the information is through a magnifying glass.
Yeah.
When you get down to it, it's spots of light. He's not. They're not done with them yet, but they're in the middle of like a bunch of psychological studies to see like what goes on in a drone pilot's brain, because no one's ever done this before in the history of humankind. This is a totally different thing. Being that divorced
from the actual violence that's taking place.
Right. It's with a sniper, you're still pulling the trigger. There's distance.
Yes.
But a drone pilot, you're sitting in an office. You're sitting in an office and you're flying
You could be in Boston.
Yeah.
And you're dropping bombs in Iraq.
A lot of drone pilots commute. They wake up, they kiss their wife good morning, they drive to work, they sit down, they kill 250 people, and then they go home and they cook their dinner and they eat their pot roast and they turn on the news. And psychologists are
But is that better than the man or woman that's on an aircraft carrier overseas and like gets in an actual like jet fighter and also kills that many people? There's really no. What's the difference?
I don't think so, because I think there should be consequences.
Okay, fair enough. No, okay, yeah.
Anything that increases the ease of war is
right.
bad.
That's bad. No, I completely agree with that.
Yeah.
But the violence is still there. Like the people are still dead. Is my point.
Right. Yeah.
But no, there
same.
needs to be some sort of gut check. Like, if I can just like open up my laptop here and hit a button and like, okay, well that was easy. I just did my job. Versus like I have to go live for 9 months on a carrier. I have to like strap my boots on and get in. And I have to launch. I have to fly. I have to actually go and do that.
Right. And of course, neither Karl nor I are like military service members. It's all just opinion.
Right. Well, I did serve, but
are you active military?
No, not active.
Are you an operator?
No, I wouldn't tell you if I was.
I always forget that you served. How long were you in again?
I just 4 years active.
Okay. Yeah, and like my brother's considering it right now. My dad was a captain, and now he's working with the military again. He's a civilian contractor now, but yeah. Did you serve in combat zone?
No, actually, I was in from 97 to 2001. So it was that weird
2000
brief period.
When were you out in 2001?
Like 2 months before.
Ooh,
yeah.
Everyone knows what we're talking about when you say 2001.
I know. A Space Odyssey.
Ooh, yeah. The Arthur C. Clarke book.
One of my favorite.
Maybe they made a movie of it.
I think they did, yeah.
Did they?
With a sequel.
Maybe. Could be. Oh, is there a sequel? Is there really one?
2010.
Don't want to watch it. Is it good?
It's Roy Scheider's in it.
Okay, maybe I do want to watch it.
Yeah.
But I was just thinking, like, we hear these stories from, like, World War II, or even from, not as much from Vietnam, but you hear these stories from World War II where there's a guy out in the field, and he turns the corner, and there is, we've been talking about humanizing them, but I'll just say the enemy. He turns the corner, and there's the enemy right in front of him, and they both have their guns, and they both look at each other, and they're both scared kids, and they walk away.
Right.
And they don't pull that trigger. They don't kill that person. And then they meet up later in life or whatever. There's always the stories you hear where it's like, you know, like my plane was going down in a Japanese.
Well, there's the whole Joy Noel thing, like the ceasefire and the trench warfare.
They played soccer with each other, and then eventually they had to circulate those soldiers out because they wouldn't kill each other.
They wouldn't kill each other. Yeah.
But like, think about that.
Yeah.
Think about that. That human. They were able to stop bloodshed and connect with people with whom they did not even share a language and were on opposite sides of an ideological spectrum because they were able to recognize each other's humanity.
Yep.
There is no chance to do that when you've got your VR headset on and you hit your cool trigger button and you get the like pew 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 sound in your ears or whatever.
Right.
I cannot possibly fathom in like that's good for humanity, that's good for the people who are doing it. That's got to be catching up with those drone pilots.
Yeah.
Like they wake up in the morning. Like, do you think the numbers ever hit you?
They would have to.
Where you're like,
you're still aware of what you're doing, even though there's separation. It's going to catch up.
You're very divorced from it, but
it might be one of those things where it catches you unexpectedly. You're on a cross country trip with your family, and all of a sudden you just lose your fucking shit.
Or you drive into a town and it's like population 1,604, and you're like, and then suddenly you're like, oh, that's how many people I've killed.
Yeah.
And then it becomes real, and then you're like, I remember the first time I was in. I think this is somehow relevant. It's the first time I was in Chicago, and we went to the top of like that building with the glass observation deck.
Oh, the observation, yeah.
And I was looking down, and I was like, wow, look at this big city. It's crazy. There's so many people. And then I was like, there's so many people. It like echoed. It was like, there's so many people, so many people, so many people. And I looked at all the cars and all the lights and all the buildings and all the humans I could see, and I'm like, I can see right now thousands of people, and they all go home at night. And they all have Netflix accounts.
Yes.
And they all eat cereal. And they all walk their fucking dog. And they all love people.
They should all subscribe to Measuring Flicks.
They should all subscribe to this podcast. It's a great commute. And when you're commuting, Chicago traffic is terrible.
But I know what you're saying, though. Yeah, it's...
the
that means exactly that feeling. There's a word for
Oh, is it really?
Bird is off mic, but she said there's a specific word for the feeling.
For that sensation.
For the sensation of realizing the humanity around you. And I was pretty young. I was still in high school as a field trip, but that forever. I mean, I'm super hippy dippy, obviously.
Right.
But that was part of what made me that way. Was the realization that they're not just like other animals walking around. They're people like I am.
Yeah.
Different than me. Some of them are bad. Some of them do bad stuff.
One
some
of
do great
the
stuff.
one of the first times I flew on a commercial airline from Grand Rapids to San Diego, and when we were going into this, because you're sitting in that plane for like 3.5, 4 hours or whatever, and you get same sort of thing. I'm like hearing bits of conversation, and I know what I'm going to San Diego for. I'm going to go sing with this group and tour high schools, and like, but that's me. I'm one person out of like these 300 people. I'm like, what the fuck is that? What are they doing? Are they coming to or going from?
Right.
Are they visiting family, or do they have a new job? And I started like making up these stories for everybody. But it at one point almost became overwhelming. I got a little bit like panic attacky because I was like, "There's so." And this is just one plane of how
is
many
a
planes that are
plane.
in the air? Because you look out my window, I'm like, shit, there are 2 planes over there. One's going the other way. One's going, and like,
Who's
sort of,
on those?
Then I looked down, same
see-
sort of thing,
I see the
and I
Earth.
saw the Earth, and I was like, fuck it, I'm done. Can I get off the plane now?
Right. You just
Can I get off the plane now? Ooh. It was like a real moment of like, because it does sort of just comes crashing down on you. It's not. That's not the right way of saying it. It's just sort of that realization, whatever that word is.
I think in a weird way, it's the other thing though. It's
Right.
where up until that point, you're walking on water, and all the humans are in the water, but you're the hero, and
Right.
you're looking
because you're the
around.
hero of your story.
And sometimes there's moments like my moment, like your moment, where you fall into the water, and now you're just
It's like the kick.
yes, it's like the kick in Inception.
Yeah,
We should watch that movie at some
I
point.
love that fucking movie.
I really don't have anything else. I wanted
I
to
don't.
talk briefly, and in as least it's a very tangly conversation.
Is it a tangled skein?
It's no, yes, no, yes,
Yeah, all right.
no. It's touchy. It's definitely a touchy conversation, and in modern America, I think it's a dangerous conversation.
You're making me very curious.
Excited.
Yes.
So this is in the 80s. So Terry Gilliam's American.
Yeah.
This is I would say
Very
he's an
British.
American. This is a very British film.
Yes.
And there's a lot of terrorist talk in this movie. And I think it's unavoidable that, I mean, V for Vendetta talks about terrorists, both the book and the film.
Yep.
And I specifically associated Brazil, this film, with the IRA. Because that was happening in the 60s and 70s.
Yeah.
So that's not too far removed from the IRA.
Maybe a decade. Yeah.
And actually, there's like,
Well, there's still more. Yeah.
even through the 80s, there was some of it, but the really violent stuff was in the, I believe, early 70s. So that was the bombings and things like
Right.
that. So, and of course, the terrorists in this film are primarily bombers. So I was wondering what the takeaway from this film, specifically vis-a-vis terrorism, is. Because we see a woman who's suspected of terrorism, and we find out that she's basically just a truck driver.
This is a goofy thing about that whole thing.
Okay.
Is until recently, last 10, 15 years, this isn't the version that the mass public saw
Right.
of this film.
They saw
It was the
Conquers
Love
All
Conquers
cut.
All cut. So that's interesting in itself. But I think what the takeaway, is it a cautionary tale, or is it more like, I don't know.
There are a couple ways to see it, because as you watch it, well, as I watched it, I was able to. I flipped between a couple things. There's a weird sense in this film. I'm talking about specifically in this film, but I wanna bring it to the real world and see where we can get with that.
Sure.
There's a weird moment where you start to, or where I started to sympathize with the. Let's assume that there are terrorists in the film,
Okay.
and it's not just
the government.
just blowing stuff up.
Sure.
There's a weird moment where you start to where I started to sympathize with the terrorists in the film, because you see an utterly diseased and dysfunctional, mechanized society where everyone is functionally dead. No one's alive. No one's living. Bird found the word?
It's a made-up word.
It's a made-up word. All words are made up.
They sure are.
Sonder.
Sonder.
The moment when you...
Yeah, it's from the Dictionary of Obscure
Come talk on the mic.
It's from the Dictionary of Obscure Sorrows, which is a YouTube channel where I believe an entomologist, is that the right word?
The people, history
man.
of words. Yeah. A word man.
Makes up words for specific feelings that aren't defined in the English language
Sonder.
or potentially even other languages. Sonder.
Sonder.
Cool.
I love it.
I love it too.
Sometimes I ponder when I sonder.
I'm ponderously sondersome. Oh, yes.
Love it.
But you empathize. I should stop saying you. I empathize or sympathize with the terrorists because
I think that's intentional. I mean, I think in a lot of these you do, even in V, in a lot of ways you sympathize with V.
definitely, and V is undoubtedly a
He's
terrorist.
your hero, and he is. He wants to blow up and does.
He does. He
blows
blows up the
fucking
houses of Parliament.
Yeah.
He is undoubtedly a terrorist.
And you are so excited when that happens.
You're on his side 100% because
You are a terrorist along with him. It's the weirdest fucking thing.
It really is, and it's an uncomfortable space because when you're in the movie, or the reading the book, or watching this, or reading 1984, you're like, yeah, this government has gone way too far. It's time for the people. They've got to take it down, and like you. But then even this movie challenges you on that because in the end, not the end, but near the end, when Sam thinks Jill has a bomb, and then the lingerie store or whatever restaurant blows up, and there's all those people on the ground, broken, bleeding, bloodied, and they're just there shopping,
Dead and dying.
They're just there shopping.
Yep.
These are not soldiers who are dead. These are mostly older women. It's mostly older women who are like on the ground, and they're pleading and they're begging and they're grabbing Sam, and he runs over. He's ignoring the casualties, focusing on who he thinks is the perpetrator.
Which
he
is
ignores
her.
the human suffering and goes and finds Jill. And he says, "How could you? I knew it was a bomb." And it wasn't a bomb.
No.
It was a box of Christmas presents. So and then what she does is she starts helping people.
Yes.
And then the soldiers come in, the government soldiers. So in that weird moment, your brain goes through the hoops of, oh my God, I cannot possibly sympathize or side with the terrorists of this film anymore because it's not this particular bombing. The first bombing we see, they keep eating dinner. And they set up a screen to hide the violence, and it becomes a kind of a black
comedic moment.
like a dark comedy, like satire of like, just don't look at it. That
if you don't look at it, it's not there. Just continue eating your meal.
First,
it's fine.
It's that first world thing where it's like, children are starving in Africa. Oh, come on, we're eating dinner. Don't talk about it.
Right.
It's very dark, but it's satirical. This one is not. This bombing is like Terry Gilliam being like, hey, look, a terrorist blew up. Let's say terrorist because let's assume that's who it is.
Yeah.
Terrorist blew up this thing, and a bunch of old women are now bleeding to death. And you're like, oh, the terrorists aren't right.
They're not right. Right.
But then the soldiers come in and they also ignore all of the suffering people and they arrest the two perpetrator people.
Yes.
So you're like, well, wait, the government.
Where's the humanity in the?
I'm like,
in any of it.
There's no humanity to either side, and in a weird way, that's the world we live in, where yes, there are terrorist attacks. And those terrorist attacks are fucking awful, and you absolutely do not sympathize with people who drive their trucks into crowds of people, or who gun down kids in schools, or who crash planes into buildings and murder thousands of innocent people. But then your government goes to a foreign nation, and they kill buildings full of innocent people. Buildings and buildings full of innocent people.
We've lost the humanity somewhere.
It's
that middle part. It's the jelly and the donut isn't there. Like where?
Well, that's what we are.
Yeah.
Most of us are just caught in between these ideological monsters. So by the end of Brazil, I think in a weird way, V for Vendetta does it kind of too. Where at the beginning of V for Vendetta is very like pro-revolution, pro-uprising. Terry Gilliam's film is much more challenging because you cannot side with this like bloodthirst and violence on the side of the people who are trying to topple this clearly dysfunctional government and society.
And also your POV character is part of that system.
Right. Well, he actually exists in both spaces
But he
because
does.
she's just a truck driver. He's the one who runs the blockade and dumps the house and kills security officers and does most of the property damage and destruction. And in fact, we actually don't see any terrorists in this movie.
You never, yeah. And
At
how many
all.
did we see? Zero.
We
didn't
saw
see any
zero
either.
terrorists. The only person who behaves in a terroristic way is our government employee, and he does it out of fear of terrorists. It's
Son of a bitch.
I know. So this, I don't know. Like it's weird. There is a I think we can all agree there's a tendency to romanticize, particularly the IRA, because they're fighting for independence
Right. Okay.
from a nation that has a history of colonialism. So the IRA is like, we want a free Ireland from our British overlords. And in a lot of movies about the IRA, in popular culture, in fiction, there is a tendency to make them out to be like they're outsiders. There's the two terms, terrorist and freedom fighter.
Right.
You know, you see like there's a tendency to romanticize particularly the IRA and say like, well, they're fighting for their freedom, right? But when you get the Viet Cong, who are, I guess, technically enemy combatants, even though that wasn't a war. We didn't
Right.
declare war. It's an illegal war. They are not seen as freedom fighters, even though they're just trying to kick out an invading force.
Right.
So,
They're protecting their.
right. So we see like this horrible slaughter, and we hear like, oh, they punji sticks and the shit on them, and they're like, oh, they're monsters. And then it's like, and then the soldiers were cutting the ears off of them and putting them on necklaces. It's like, oh, well, so we were monsters too.
Right.
And then so that one's like a weird gray wash where everyone's just shitty.
Yeah.
And then you have the Taliban and you have ISIS, and no one is romanticizing them at all. They're like, oh, these guys are fucking totally
They behead
insane
journalists
monsters,
and
they're
do that.
burning pilots alive, and they're like, oh, so they are absolutely insane monsters. But all three of those groups they're the same type of thing, and it's. I don't have answers. I have no way to unpack it.
It's beyond.
It's just how we come at it cognitively. It's how we frame it, and that's why I wanted to talk about it. Is like this is a brain breaker.
It is. It really is. I mean, especially when you're talking. I mean, when you talk about terrorism, it's a global problem. It's not like everything is a global problem. We're all people and humans.
London,
on
Paris,
this, right.
Germany. There was a big shooting in Norway that was apparently like politically motivated. That was years ago, but yeah, there's no breaking news here, folks.
And it's like it's always been a part of our culture.
Right.
Is humans killing other humans.
Right. It is a conflict. It's conflict and war, and it's you know what it comes down, I think, to ideology.
Tribalism, and it's
definitely. But and maybe tribal ideologies, because when we see what we call terrorists are not governmentally recognized organizations fighting.
We're still fucking barbarians, man. We're just seeing the world
really
through
are.
these like. We're just wearing suits now.
Well, and
instead of like,
I think
nothing has.
There's the weird distinction where I'm just gonna grab nations.
Yeah.
Let's say France attacks Germany, and Germany and France are fighting. That's a war, and those are two armies. If a small subgroup of French people saw that the German, nothing against either nation. I'm just grabbing countries.
You're literally just grabbing.
I'm just grabbing countries. The German government has become totalitarian, a weird, like a new neo-fascism, and they saw atrocities happening. And that group of people in France, who are not a recognized nation, went over and did exactly the same things that the French army did, except on a smaller scale. They are terrorists.
Yes.
Isn't that weird?
Yeah, it's because if it's sanctioned and you have the form and you fill out the form.
Oh my God. Oh my God, Carl! It's paperwork.
It's paperwork.
Paperwork
Yes.
is the difference between
Yep.
a military action and a terrorist
Do you have your
action.
form DD-40? Yeah, do you have the form?
Carl, that is so depressing.
I know.
Well,
If you have the right paperwork, then it's okay. If you don't,
what the fuck? That's true, though.
it is.
If
It's
you have
absolutely
the
true.
right paperwork, you're okay. Mm-hmm. And if you don't,
And so it's like driving
Oh my-
a car too. It's like if
oh my
it's
God!
everything is
So Tuttle is actually a terrorist.
yeah.
his cleaning, his fixing that heating duct in this extreme end game of a world, he does not have his paperwork in order, and therefore the government recognizes him as a terrorist.
He would have to be. He doesn't have the paperwork. He doesn't have the forms filed.
Fuck, Carl. Holy shit, man. All right, I don't have anything else on the movie, and we're not going to solve terrorism.
No,
in
of
15
course
minutes,
not,
But
but
I'm glad we brought it up
Yep.
because we keep running into it in these movies. So
We really do. We really do.
So, yeah, man, Brazil, what a fucking great movie. And you know what? Terry Gilliam, I'm super excited.
Dude, that makes me very happy.
Let's do it. Let's sneak in. I know we've got plans, but let's sneak in Time Bandits somewhere so we can
let's
see
do it.
all three of them.
I would love that. I would love that.
Oh, God. All right. So let's do our housekeeping and get out of here. We have to have all of our forms in order.
Can we just not do the paperwork?
Yeah, no paperwork today.
No
folks.
paperwork today, thank you.
We'll get back to paperwork next time. Just take this opportunity to go and enjoy Brazil. Just make sure that before you go and enjoy Brazil to have all of your forms signed in triplicate.